recover there, but there's one area I wanted to talk about in depth. And so we're going to spend a bit of time on something that's been the most interesting for you and for the feedback I've received, which is around what we've been doing on mapping the enterprise capability using Git Insights. So we're going to spend a bit of time on that. And then we're going to transition a little bit and talk about what does the future bring for the technology and innovation. Where do we see this going next, and what's to come? So with that being said, I'm just going to steal the screen here and take over and start my presentation. On the screen. There we go. All right, we'll kick off. So it seems like in Edmonton these days, all I talk about is the weather or AI. And I thought that this was, given the extreme weather we're having, I thought it was an interesting example here. This picture here, if you look closely, I went on the internet yesterday and I was wondering about tornadoes and things like that after the extreme weather we've been having. And I found the site Tornado Path, so don't mean to show you out, but one of the interesting observations from the site was that most tornadoes occur at 12 a.m. In fact, 100% of the tornadoes in Alberta occur exactly at midnight. And so this is an amazing example of interpreting the results of artificial intelligence. So they asked it to derive insights from that. And of course, they used date information that had no time. In fact, had 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 mountain time, which is midnight. And so AI inferred that, therefore, all tornadoes happen exactly at midnight 100% of the time. So this is, I thought I would share it as a little opening anecdote. But this is sort of the challenges that we find ourselves in using artificial intelligence. It's great to aggregate information and build dashboards, but you do have to use your critical judgment when it's presenting some of the information, because it can lead you to wrong inference. So I thought the confluence of tornadoes and AI seem to be all the rage these days. So I thought I would share that. And just as a friendly reminder that we have to keep an eye on what AI is telling us. So I talked a little bit about the agenda. I won't spend too much time going into there. I will jump to really the 4 challenges, and these are the ones that we spoke about at depth in the white papers. They're the 4 challenges that keep governments constrained. And so number 1 is, I don't believe there's a government in Canada today, certainly federally, provincially, or territorially, that's not very focused on managing the bottom line, being fiscally responsible and managing within a deficit. So we share a need to be as innovative as we can. As we look forward, those deficits are compounded by technical debt. So we have thousands of systems across Canada supporting every, and we also with many of the same systems, in fact, whether it's in healthcare or corrections or program delivery, vehicle registration, all of these systems, they sort of rhyme as you go across the country. They're different systems almost universally, but they do many of the same things. And they're decaying and changing and aging out faster than we're able to respond to. The third area is cybersecurity. We find ourselves really faced with a tremendous amount of increase in cybersecurity. Both, there's some folks online. Please mute yourself if you're online. We have a lot of folks around the world who are probing our cybersecurity defenses, and we're moving as fast as they are. And then we have rising demand. So in the mix of all of this, we have to face the demand from our citizens. They have high expectations. They want reasonably fast and usable government services, and we have a need to. They have a right to expect more, and we have a need to deliver faster, and with the same resources that they have. So really pulled in these 4 different ways, it is apparent to me that there really is no alternate, credible technology or methodology that has emerged that is as impactful as artificial intelligence in addressing all 4 of those. And that's why we put out the white papers just a couple of weeks ago. Over the last 18 months, as I've spoken about many times, we have surfaced patterns of work that have demonstrated to be repeatable and to be reliable. And this has taken a significant amount of trial and error. When we are thinking about the capacity of artificial intelligence, I share with people that we've produced somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 different prototypes and systems over the last 18 months. And in that, a subset of those systems have made their way into production and have been extremely valuable. And if you look at the ratios, you may come to the incorrect conclusion that the majority of AI prototypes or projects fail. And certainly that is a message that's shared with you all through social media and through the news, is to say, oh, AI projects, only 10% of them or 5% of them succeed. Well, when your cost for a prototype is less than $10, it's okay for it not to succeed. And in fact, we encourage people to explore and develop things that will open up new opportunities. And I can say that the vast majority of times, with the ones that are succeeding are paying such a significant ROI that they more than fund the whole thing. In fact, Infotech was kind enough to do a podcast that was released yesterday that some of you have seen. And I shared there, and I'll share with you in the room, that we're saving or offsetting between $1 million to $2 million per week now because of artificial intelligence. And that's a big deal for us. That's a big deal for this government to run a more efficient set of systems. That's money that we can reinvest to address cybersecurity, address technical debt, and reinvest in the renewal of our systems. And those returns are very real. And what's apparent to us and what's critical for us is that we cannot afford as Canadians to solve this 13 or 14 times or 330 times across every municipality in Alberta, or thousands more times across every municipality in Canada. And so our vision is that we are able to use publications like the Velocity White Papers and to use events like this to galvanize and energize a truly Canadian response to artificial intelligence and to demonstrate how these technologies can be used effectively. Sharing with others allows us to iterate, refine, and hopefully leapfrog us. So our expectation is that by putting everything out, we short circuit the time it takes, the 6 months, the 10 months, the 12 months it takes to solve something. We put out something, and then you can leapfrog us using artificial intelligence, hopefully in a matter of hours or days, and create a better product. This allows us to also reset our relationship with industry. We know AI is changing our relationships. We want healthy, long-term, productive relationships with industry to help us solve these critical problems. And we want to make that easier than ever through procurement and through transparency for others to come in and work with us in that space. So that's the vision behind it. And the T-shaped strategy that I often speak of is really mass enablement with deep investment into specific areas. So out of the box, we know tools like chat interfaces are helpful. They raise productivity by as much as 10% and have a 5-to-1 return on investment. So that's pretty good. It's hard to find things with a 5-to-1 return on investment. But the problems we're facing in government don't fit within a context window. The scale and complexity continue to defy us, and they exceed naive use. And by that, I mean you simply can't just go to Notebook LM. I love that tool, but you just can't give it 400 million lines of code and say, okay, help me out here. It can't work. And governments around the world, we hear through our partners, and I hear directly, are trying. Some are succeeding, but many are struggling to understand how to go deeper. The patterns that we have learned that work is again, try at scale. So, not dozens or ones and twos of prototypes, thousands of prototypes. Building your harnesses, standards, and templates deliver higher outcome than relying on the model itself. And that real strides can be made in specific areas around IT delivery, training, and things like that when you go deep. And so that's, if I was going to give you the elevator pitch, it would be enable everyone and invest deeply into what you can find. So I'm going to spend about half the session here talking about Git Insights. And artificial intelligence has opened up a level of unparalleled insight into what we do with technology and innovation, supporting the backbone of government. And I can tell it has resonated with all of you. So Git Insights is, by a fair margin, the most popular technical paper on the Velocity White Paper site. And since we published the white papers, we've released the open source tool called Git Insights Hub that merges together the Git Insights and the Git Insights Ministry paper technology into a single repository that's live. So you can get it on the left-hand side. And we've used that to open up insights into the shape of government, the shape of IT, what we're doing, and the capabilities we have. And as far as I'm aware, I don't believe any government's ever done this before in terms of using artificial intelligence to extract out the nature and shape of the technology we have. And on the right-hand QR code, you can see a visualization of that along with the source data. So we took around 100 gigabytes of code, 400 million lines of code, and we compressed it massively down to about 13 megabytes of JSON. And that gives you an insight, and I'm going to show you some of those visualizations that you can derive from that. It gives you an insight into the shape and nature of government technology. Now, it's not all-encompassing. We'll have more to come on that. But it is a really interesting viewpoint into what we have going on. So what it shows you is that we've scanned over 4,000 applications. We've mapped those into 2,000, almost 2,200 different business capabilities, representing 75,000 screens and over 206,000 extracted business rules. Of that, there's 112,000 API endpoints in the system. So it gives you a sense of if you work in technology and someone asks you to build that, say no. But it gives you a sense of the size of what we're contending with and the shape of the technical debt. And so this is just sort of some of the at-a-glance insights. And we did our most recent scan just a couple of weeks ago. And it took 4.7 billion tokens to parse through there. And so thanks for our friends at Google for giving us the bandwidth to go in and push that much insights through the system as well. And it allowed us to extract the data set that I'm going to show you and that I referenced on the previous slide. So I'm okay. Thanks. Thanks, Siri. So what we've published out today is our first version of this, and it's by no means our last. It'll get more and more high fidelity, but the shape of it really allows you to see government from three dimensions. One is capability. Often we have many folks coming to us and saying, "Hey, what does government need? What does government do?" And if you look at us through the procurement window, you get a very narrow keyhole view as to what government actually does. And we find ourselves in a little bit of a guessing game, because we're guessing as to the capabilities of industry, and industry is guessing at the needs of government. And so we go through this a little bit of a dance through the procurement method, and the feedback that we hear is there's a bit of frustration with that, and it's felt on both sides. So what you can get a sense of through this data set is, what does government do? And there's probably a meme from Office Space that I could have put in there. If you know the meme, which is, can you explain what you do here? And so this is what we do here. The second angle is you can look at it from the code. So the repositories, the screens, the workflows, the logic. Now, we didn't publish out the detailed information. We've abstracted that a little bit. And then the third dimension is the technology. So what languages do you use? What frameworks do you use? What environments do you use? So those are really multiple different ways to see that, a three-dimensional view of government. And I'll show you that coming up as a visual if you haven't got there as well. Along the ride, we're really getting to the heart of how we contend with technical debt. And this is the estate insight. So we built a chief architect agent, and we created a set of criteria around how we might remediate our systems. And we really gave it the Gartner time analysis, if you will, but we broke it down into these 4 buckets. And this is, we created different heuristics about the age of the code, the number of the dependencies, underlying database, underlying server, whether things had CI pipelines, whether they had unit tests. We gave it a whole battery of different concerns, and this is how the assessment came out. There's about 1,500 of those repositories that is recommended to maintain. It's in a healthy state. There are no critical dependencies. This is information. These are technologies that are serving us, that are relatively modern and new. It identified a similar amount to remediate. About 1,375 apps said need some love. These need a bit of an uplift. Consolidate found 739 repos that it said were completely redundant to other things that we were doing and could be sunset. And then it found about 400 that needed to be completely rebuilt. They were unsalvageable, unpatchable. The technology was so far out of date, you simply couldn't uplift it. It needed a rebuild. And so those were really the kind of the 4 disposition maps that came out of that assessment. And what I was very excited about was the opportunity to look at the redundancy aspect of this. As it says there on the bottom of the screen, the vision is to use AI not to vibe code 4,000 more applications, it's to get rid of 2,000 applications along the way. And so I'd love to see a mass consolidation. We see such redundancy that you'll see just in a minute through the visualization. We see such redundancy of capability, and that's nobody's fault. It's simply the way that we have worked as separate ministries, creating IT solutions over decades. It's very reasonable that we come to this point. But artificial intelligence gives us an opportunity to look for like and begin to match those similarities together and really go after the modular, sustainable, minimum footprint, minimum attack surface technologies that we need to run as government. So if in a year from now or 6 months from now, we're doing a velocity symposium and I'm celebrating that we have 8,000 repositories, we've gone in the wrong direction. Turn me around and send me back. I'd love to get it closer to we believe from a code perspective, it's probably a 10-to-1 compression, which is possible while maintaining the fidelity of the logic of the business rules that we have and purging a lot of just redundant stuff. So that's a really key insight. And I'm going to walk you through some visualizations on this because I hope it helps to land the visuals, the experience here. I'm just going to share my screen and pull up the visual on this. So we did something a little bit bold here. We published this. This is open. And like I said, we've abstracted this out. We gathered all of the repositories. As we passed through, we asked AI to look at what each piece of code was doing and create a business capability map. And what emerged from it was 40 different domains, so business domains, and 2,000 different business capabilities, and mapped out 50 different primary technology stacks along the way. And you can filter through some of this and look at it. The one that I think is impactful to give you sort of a sense of things right now is this is what a government looks like today in its most compressed form. So along the broad row there, I'll stop the spinning here. Along the broad row there, you see those 40 capabilities mapped here in this axis. And then along the other way, you see the technology stacks. And again, these have been even further compressed, just down to a few lines instead of those 50 technology stacks. And in green, you see items that have that have strong health, right? So you see the green line across the bottom. And in orange, you see things that are aging out. And then in red, you see things that are deemed legacy. And it's deemed legacy for a number of different reasons, due to lack of vendor support, due to the presence of at least one high vulnerability in the dependency map. So all code depends on other code. So if you see often it's not just the things we build in government, we rely on third-party open source tools, and AI is making it extremely possible to identify vulnerabilities in that code as well. And so we've seen a sort of exponential hockey stick happen since the release of models like Fable and GPT 5.6 and Kimi 3. They are very good at finding vulnerabilities. Those get published out, and we subscribe to those publications and map them back to our technologies. And so you get a sense of the magnitude of the rust out there. So red doesn't mean dead in this instance, in the sense that they have no value. What they mean is these are the areas where we can prioritize our investment along the lines with business capability investment. So as we're developing new programs, modernizing systems, releasing new services to Albertans, we look at the health of our systems and we make architectural decisions that close off this. So sometimes when you talk to IT, we'll say, hey, we don't really want to upgrade that system. We want to rebuild it. And it's very frustrating because it's like, no, I just want my system upgraded. But at a certain point, we can't anymore because the services simply aren't supported. Another view I'll show you, and then you can navigate through this at your own pace. This business capability tile map. And so I'll give it a second here to load. And this is just, they're all 12 views are the same data, by the way. They're just different ways of looking at the same data set, so you can look through and filter it. But I think for industry and for many of our partners, this view is likely one of the most interesting. You see those 40 business capabilities broken down here in these different buckets. So analytics, artificial intelligence, asset management. I'll scroll down to something that's not A. Case management, content management, corrections and offender management, et cetera. So you sort of get a sense of what those broad capabilities are. And to interpret what's going on here is you see the capability named here. So I see application branding and theming or portal content search, right? So there's 63 applications I have highlighted that have some sort of portal content search code. And you can look through all 2,000 of those capabilities, and this is really showing you, the granular, a granular view into what's going on within government. I'm hoping the intent of releasing this is that industry is able to sort of say, okay, I see what you do now, government. I've never really seen it this way before. I've never had this kind of deep insight. And I can also start to look through domain risk, for example, and say, okay, well, maybe I have different solutions. Maybe I can filter it and look at, the age of what you're using, and maybe I can come and present something that's more up to date. Or I can look at this flag, which is the redundancy flag, which is to say, okay, in purple, which will load here in a second, there we go. In purple, what we see is this is an area where there's maybe a wealth of opportunity to compress and compact and go under a single platform. And to start to look at rationalizing a lot of this stuff. So it's another great way to look at that information. So again, you can navigate through those pieces. And the last one is again some of the portfolio flows. The sand key diagram is also a really cool way to look at it. So if we look at sort of transportation-oriented systems, and we are modernizing those. We're in the midst of modernizing many areas of government, but you can see that there are a great number of different technologies. There's .NET and Java and web and Python and analytics and Terraform scripts and all that. That's the underlying technologies there. So it gives you a sense of that diversity. And then you can actually drill down into an abstracted version of the apps here as well. So I'm going to pause that and go back to the presentation, but feel free to navigate. Oh, one more fun view, 3D view. All of government has a 3D. It looks like a virus in this case. But anyway, you can sort of mix and match some different views in that 3D view there as well. So we do invite you to have a look at it. This is the first, but by no means the last release of this information. As you'll see, we want to dive a little bit deeper and go under the hood here a bit more. We have to expand that picture as well. And if you're looking for a holistic view of government, this is really for us and for, I would say, most of our partners across Canada, this is a reasonable representation of where knowledge and information lives. So to unlock the capabilities of AI to take on these 4 approaches to modernization, we really need to unlock the source information. What we've been talking about this morning and through the papers is a lot about GitHub, because we're very interested in the code itself. But the code is only a facet of the pieces of information. We also have ServiceNow, where we contain our configuration management database, our tickets, our knowledge, our incidents, and our project management. We have our 1GX ERP system, which is our payments, contracts, financial management. Our SharePoint contains documentation, instructions, learning materials, architectures. We have our tickets in Jira and Confluence, and we have, of course, our thousands and thousands of databases that support these systems as well. Those are our data objects that we need to make sense of, and it's all tied together through a network topology, service maps, and access management, IAM. And then, of course, we're on-prem in cloud. And when we take all of these different pieces, this is where government gets mired down. These are the different segmented areas of knowledge that do not natively stitch together in any capacity, but this is where AI helps us to bridge that gap. Going to the next slide here. So if we integrate that information using AI, we have the opportunity to bring together a holistic view that allows us to modernize very quickly. So if you can imagine a ministry having programs having applications, business capabilities, And each application having what I showed you, repositories, SharePoints, Jira, ServiceNow, data, tech stacks, those drilling down into tickets and CMDB and mapping to enterprise architecture and things like that. This is the missing glue that AI fills for us. This is the glue that holds it holds in people's heads today, that we can leverage and merge together. And so, integrating the source information, we can bring together the knowledge of government, and we can enable both human and AI modernization and transformation through a view like this. And so that's really our next phase that we're building upon, which is to be able to link these primary systems together, and then to be able to derive the insights and to be able to navigate that knowledge tree down. So when a ministry comes to us and says, I need to modernize this system, we should be able to grab that application and pull out with it the composite knowledge that makes up the ability to modernize that tool. And that will save us months to years of archaeological extraction along the modernization path and allow us to move much more quickly. What this looks like in practice is really small font. And so I can't do anything about that, but you can look at this on your own time. I'll publish this out. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit. We've now built and deployed the garage aspect of it, and it's the first version. You'll see a more holistic, smaller font version on the next slide. But the AI garage is already operational using AI, which is cloning the repositories. It's looking at dependencies. It's identifying secrets. It's looking at GitHub dependabots. It's finding reachable and unreachable vulnerabilities. It's triaging them, looking for where the potential vulnerabilities lie. It's using a council-based AI approach to have 5 different AIs go into a room, their own little spot, come up with a plan, and then they do a juried competition as to the right way forward. There's a lead adjudicator who picks the plan, and then the conductor sets in and spends somewhere around an hour fixing each repository. So 4,000 repositories, the average time to modernize those repositories that can be updated, which is most of them, is about 1 hour for AI to be able to do that. They move on till they reach 0 higher critical vulnerabilities. The goal is build to green. And they have a token budget that is managed centrally so that they get to borrow if they're having success. So they can actually make a plan, and then they have to borrow from a central pool from each other. They do local containerized building, and then they go through a 13-gate checklist. And in the end, what we end up with is they either fail to remediate their own vulnerabilities, or they succeed and open a pull request, or they get a little confused and they need help, and they can raise their hand and get some help. So that's giving you a sense of, a little bit more depth from what the papers talked about this AI garage method. And by no means is it the holistic picture in terms of, oops, well, that was a universe I didn't even know existed. I didn't know I could zoom out this far. Hold on. There we go. We're back. That's I'll just step you into, oh, there we go. I went into the matrix for a second there. There we go. All right. And so this is a segment of our overall piece. This is what we're building next, and this is what we want to build with all of you. So the AI garage that I just walked you through is the next service that we're going to be open sourcing here in Alberta, so that you can look and replicate that. We're able to run 10 on a single GCP node, mid-sized node. We're able to run 10 remediations concurrently. We can spin up as many nodes as we want, so you could theoretically patch an entire enterprise of government systems in a day if you had the token throughput. Where's Mike? Mike, give me some tokens. Yeah, need that throughput. We actually are hitting our peak through tokens per minute. This is a larger view that I'll leave you with. I won't spend too long. Bugs are only part of the picture, so that's in the top left there, we see that. We also need to expand this AI garage concept into product feature requests, new data fields, legislative changes, or signals and events, such as logs or feedback or telemetry that we have from our SIEM tool. All of those form an intake. They go through triage, they go through orchestration, and then they go through the build process, virtualization, testing, deployment, monitoring. Much of this is a majority of what we've seen so far through the hundreds of applications we've remediated this way so far is that AI is probably pretty good at getting to about 70%. And from those, that's where we need real engineers to step in and dive in and help to do that. It needs real thinking, planning, or it comes across something that is simply just too old or outside of its ability to modernize. And again, just to bring you back, we're really only looking at the GitHub aspect at this point. There's a much larger domain where we want to continue to modernize our ServiceNow apps and continue to build and expand our SAP footprint and so forth. And we have nearly 20,000 SharePoint sites as well. So giving a sense of magnitude. So the concept that opens up through this and that I spoke about at the introduction really goes into working differently. And I'm very pleased that so many of you from the private sector have joined this call today and expressed so much interest and support for the work that we're doing. It's support that we very much wish to rely on. And I have a little bit of an invitation for you. I do believe, and I've spoken about this before, that I do believe that any organization has to embrace a sense of play. And so maybe we can have a bit of play over the next couple of months. And I'd like to use these insights to change how we're actually engaging and leveraging this. None of what I've shown you would have been possible if not for the vendors and the technologies who make it possible. The Jiras, the Confluence, the ServiceNows, the SharePoints, the Googles, the Microsofts, AWSs, the Anthropics. These are all the companies that we rely on to make this possible. And so what I'm hoping for in my invitation to you is to say, let's use this information and this opportunity, this AI opportunity, to really think differently together around how we will go and procure the future around technology. So I spoke about that keyhole experience of seeing a very narrow lens into government. We're trying to expand that. There is a 20-second paper 22 on the site, speaks at some depth around some of the challenges around procurement being difficult to crack from the outside. Some of the bids we receive are hundreds of pages and take months to review, and vendors are in fact guessing at undocumented systems. That's not a fault of anyone, in fact. That's simply the method that we use. And what I'm hoping is the open data that you've seen today changes the ability for us to interact and engage. What I'd like to see is that as the code shows, is maybe there's 10 times to maybe 100 times more fidelity and depth than what we put out through there, and that there are many of the rules that are tying under the system that would change the way we would procure and implement different systems. There's tens to hundreds of integration points, and we've had decades of change orders and updates to our systems as well. So what would it mean to change the way we work? So where I'm hoping that we get to, and I'm hoping that folks engage with us, is that wouldn't it be interesting, along with the map that I've just shown you that describes the capability of government, that we ship along an agent MD or a Claude MD file with the map that you've seen that allows you to map in your solutions into our architecture. So imagine that three-dimensional view into government. You can simply insert and inject your capabilities and your offerings into that space. Helping us solve kind of like acupuncture, help us go into the point where there's the most critical pain point, where you see it, we can all admire right there in that part of government. There's this critical need. You can prove it. You can step into that part, and then through that transparency, there is a leveled playing field. Everyone gets an equivalent insight into the depth of government. And our vision is that, again, a successful bid should take you hours to submit with a high confidence of that you've met all of the requirements and you're not being screened out on technicality or some minor gap, and that a bid should, again, take hours, not weeks. And so I would imagine, again, that somewhere around the next 100 to 200 million of procurement around technical debt remediation will go in this direction. So if you're interested, that's sort of the invitation to play. So today is July 28th. You do have these data sets, and you do have the visualizer and the white papers and the AI Garage and all of those pieces available to you today. I'd like to ask a favor of you, if you're interested to participate, that you use the next couple of months, you work with us and dig in, ask questions, and build some meaningful ideas around how to really solve government's most critical problems that we talked about. And the week of October 5th, we're going to be holding an event here in Edmonton and in Calgary called Agency. And this will be our 5th agency event since last year. And we are going to have a day on October 5th for government to showcase what we're doing for modernization and industry to come and join us. And then we'll have a day in Calgary with a broader tent of various public sector and private sector partners as well there. So 2 days, 2 different cities. And I'd love it for if we could ground some of your great innovation into addressing some of the critical needs and opportunities in government. So that's really the invitation to play, if you will. Next slide. There's 2 real tracks that I want to speak about. And this is, I'll sort of wrap up my presentation at this part, and I'll time check myself here. I have a clock. Oh, phone's dead. I'll just wait for someone to pull me off the stage. But there's 2 real parts that I want to talk about. So we've walked through a lot, and as you can tell from the papers and the GitHub repositories and everything we're sharing, there's a lot of depth to it. And I apologize for the micro font, but there's a lot that we're trying to engineer here. And there's really 2 tracks forward that I think remain critically unsolved. We know now with the state of the models with Gemini and Claude and Grok and OpenAI models amongst many of the other open source models, the Coheres, the Mistrals and the Kimis and the other models, we know that AI is reaching a tipping point where it has the ability to do this work. What we lack is the engineering in 2 primary domains that we need your help to solve. Domain number 1 is the human domain. So if we had the ability to deploy thousands or tens of thousands of agents to rebuild government, would we have the ability to change? That change is not easy. It's not easy because my brain calcifies more slightly every day. I may be losing neurons and not being able to tell. But realistically and seriously, the change that when government introduces change, it impacts a lot of people. It impacts our more than 5 million citizens that we have in this province and many stakeholders beyond the province. It impacts our thousands of partners and service delivery organizations who deliver critical government services on our behalf. It impacts the more than the 30,000 public servants who use these tools day in and day out. And the ability to absorb that much change is not easy, even if we preserve the capabilities of the technology we've been talking about. That requires a lot of change. Going from 10 screens down to 1 sounds great, and it is great, but it still requires you to learn that new screen and change your processes, rebuild your training. No one has solved this. This is a great unsolved challenge around how to support human change at scale. And there is a lot of great thinking about change management through ProSci and other organizations who have really laid the groundwork of this over decades. But I want to invite you to think about it in an AI maximalist, AI-centric approach. How would we treat and approach human change with instead of rounding up a bunch of public servants and putting them into classrooms for months at a time and rewriting the manuals and doing things like that? What if I paired every public servant with a model that mapped to their job, that helped coach them through, that gave them a learning trajectory, or even tailored the system to their needs? There's no need that an enterprise system has 1 screen that we all learn. That was the pre-AI era thinking. Why don't I have a screen for myself as an individual that's tailored to the work that I do? It's custom built and bespoke. It's ephemeral and goes away when I need it or changes when I demand it. If I need a new workflow or a new screen, a new view, I should simply be able to request it from the system itself and have that capability in my hand. As you're going to hear from AltaML, they're making those changes exactly that quickly with their clients. The client has an idea, they have a challenge, they have one of their architects or their C-suite who can fix it from thousands of kilometers away in real time and push it to them. That is the reality of where lead organizations are taking us today. So what would change look like in that capacity? When every function is preserved, consolidation will drive that. Things may get bumpy, but we want to channel stakeholder energy back into the system. I should be able to request from my tool to change, and it should change without me putting a ticket into IT potentially. These are the capabilities I want us to explore. So think of the capacity for human change as engineering track one. And then there's the hard engineering problem two, which is engineering the factory itself. So if we have a modular architecture of government that's 10 times compressed and it's informed by everything we do today with no loss in capability, what does that look like? We have some notional target architectures, but what it requires is orchestrating tens of thousands of agents to keep track and harmonize with each other at the same time. So our vision is that every app in every environment, so development, user testing, production, has an agent that lives with it, and each of those developer agents has 10 oversight agents, a cybersecurity, a privacy, user testing. Imagine a fully orchestrated system. They need to share, and this is one of the amazing abilities that I talk about in the compression white paper, the compression problem. They can do something that we can't do. They can share the same architecture in their head at the same time. And so think of it as a, as at the lower level of an agent doing some code comes across the problem, then it makes a decision on this dependency, I'm going to use that dependency. That decision can percolate up through the overall architecture in real time and either be approved or denied. No one has engineered this yet. This is the tough second problem. The models are there, the tools are there, the cloud providers are there. We're all ready for it, but the engineering hasn't been done yet. And again, tens of millions an inference. You can infer what I'm talking about. And also on the shifting sands of models. So the model that you get today is not the model that you get tomorrow, is not the model that comes out next week. We have to stabilize that. We do know that some partners, and some that you're going to hear about hopefully in the room today, have solved some of this. They do have models that we can deploy in an enterprise state that don't get quantized, that don't get dumbed down, that don't get nerfed behind the scenes. We need stable models. This is one of the things that we have to engineer into this scenario as well. So that's really the ask and the opportunity. I'm just going to, again, have a quick peek at time. I'm about 10 minutes, I think, ahead of time. So the ask for you is that, dive into the papers. Start with the Git insights, the data sets, the visualizers. Map your ideas around that. Share if you're a public body, share with us or take what we've shared and start to utilize it. And then whether you're private sector or not, we'd love to have a great event here in the October 5th. We'd love to host you, whether you're partners in health, our agencies, our public bodies, our municipalities. We have a tremendous opportunity here. We have nothing holding us back. We've got the capabilities. We've got the people who have the genius. We've got the vision. So there's really nothing holding us back. I think we need to continue and demonstrate that. And for us, again, aligning our procurement with this, making it easy and fast and clear in terms of how you can tie in, I think is a great opportunity for us to share all together. So this is actually not a bad time to do the switch over and get the next folks up. I don't know. I'm gonna go ad hoc here. I'm gonna steal 5 minutes and just see if anyone has a quick question in the room. I did finish a little bit early on what I walked through. We'll have more time for questions for the panel, but this will be my last opportunity for if there's any questions in the room about that technical deep dive. Michelle is going to grab a couple of microphones there at the back so we can switch to that, and maybe I'll take down my screen so the camera can come back up from there. Great, beat me to it. Any questions in the room? Oh, there's one at the back.
Hi. Well, first of all, thanks for the talk. I thought it was great. I was particularly interested in your piece about the estate assessment and how you talked about you found all these tools that you could trim fat or consolidate.
Yep.
How do you establish confidence in that, especially when you're dealing with problems at scale? What sort of validation techniques do you use?
Yeah, so I won't pull the slide up. When we are looking at all these things, it's a great question. So we're still validating them manually. Now, does that scale? So that's the current answer. A system can do a pull request. You can see every diff in the code. You can see what's been changed, and you have a complete written narrative of everything that the methodology was there. Not all of our code has CI pipelines built into it. So a lot of our what that means for, if you're not technical, if you have a continuous integration pipeline, that means that a bot will pick up your code, run a script, and put it into a development environment for you to test it. It saves a lot of work. Along that pathway, it does a lot of secondary testing. So it runs your unit tests, makes sure nothing's broken. It makes sure that the code is all green, the dependencies are up to date. Does a lot of checking, and then it releases that either automatically or at your discretion into the development environment, so you can go and test it manually. So that's the state we are at today. Where I'd like to get is I'd like to go a little bit further down that path and pull in through this engineering problem I talked about. I'd like the agents to actually virtualize the environment, pull in the secrets, set up a database, and actually do the smoke testing. So that is when you open an application, you put eyeballs on the application, and you say, can I log in? Does everything load? Are there regressions, meaning did I break anything along that path? I believe we can continue through engineering to push that further and further away using things like, we're using Puppeteer, for example, and Playwright to do a lot of that automated testing, using Cypress and other tools. That goes into the engineering problem. If we want to go to the domain, and I don't know if Chris Wright's in the room, I think he's at a cabin, so shout out to Chris Wright. If we go to the path of what Chris calls self-healing applications, at a certain time, we get to the point where we trust the process enough that we can say, we will address it on breakage. And we already know how to do this because we have A/B testing built into all of our deployment environments, whether it's ARO, I believe you can do A/B. We certainly do it through Microsoft and through AWS and Google releases. A/B testing means you put out the old version and the new version, and you allow sort of 5% of your users to test the new version. And if they don't freak out, you let 10% use it, and then 50%, and then 80%, and then you collapse the old version. You move on. So these are well-known engineering patterns. The question is how, it's really around layering more of the engineering problem on track 2 that I talked about. So for now, we're looking at it with human eyeballs. We're focusing it towards teams who have, we're chewing the, we're taking a bite of this apple one step at a time, and we're starting with the easier domains where we have dependency challenges all the way up to platform rust out. So we're working progressively deeper into it. So I hope that answers the question.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Right. Phil Laliberté from Cohere. So in reading the white paper, I think the 22nd paper, Taking the Hill, Changing Procurement, I think has the opportunity to be the most transformative across public sector. Noticed recently, signed an agreement with Minister Janak in Quebec. Is there interest from other jurisdictions to sort of transform procurement in a similar way?
I won't speak for them. I do believe there's 639 people online. I think you have representatives from most of those. So I think it would be a good follow-up. I personally believe the reason I called it Taking the Hill was a little joke to myself. I said in my first couple of months on the job that you can't, procurement's the hill you have to be willing to die on to solve modernization. And so that's the thinking here. If we don't make it easier for companies like Cohere, like yourselves, to come in and understand how to add value, if we make it too opaque, if we make the avenues in too difficult, we're not going to get the best companies in the world coming in here and solving some of our problems. And so I can't speak on behalf of them. I think that we do collaborate very closely on AI and procurement and cybersecurity. Those are the 3 FPT tables I sit on. I think that, I will say that I do believe there's a common understanding that we do need to make procurement easier for everybody. For government, it's hard for us. I talk about that in the white paper. If a vendor overflows us with thousands of pages of marketing material, guess who's stuck with that? We're stuck with it. We've got to read every single page to see if you're compliant or not. Well, we can fix that. We can make it so easy for you to bid that your AI can do it, is our goal. And we should be able to, and you should know right from the get-go that you're compliant against the rules that we published before you submit it as well. So we I do believe it's necessary to make it that easy, and that will accelerate the kinds of innovations that we can do. So can't speak on behalf, but I believe that they'd be open to leveraging that approach. One more back.
Hello, good morning. First of all, I just want to say the white paper, amazing. I think this is something, I think the first government agency in the world that's ever done this, in my perspective. I just wanted to ask you a question about a specific thing in the white paper. It said that you guys, okay, so you during the 5 days or 4 or 5 days, you guys found a subsidy program portal. And apparently it has been around for 25 years. And you also said that you guys have been saving currently $2 million a week. Does that have a connection? Was there some sort of, what could you say? Was this portal still being used maybe secretly at some point? Or was there money somehow being flowing out of that portal and that you guys fixed it and that's how you're saving the $2 million a week?
So it's a good question. The primary ways, so when I mentioned that we have about 600 different applications in our backlog. So these are the things that our ministry partners are asking us to modernize or transform or net new ideas. And that list is growing all the time. When we look at our backlog, we use costing heuristics, so rules of thumb on how we cost estimate these things. That helps us to put our plan, our financial management, put forward asks to Treasury Board and things like that. So we do have estimates on projects before we start them. What we're finding and what we demonstrated in that paper through the team is they had identified platforms like that are either legacy platforms that were estimated in their replacement cost $1 million or $2 or $3 or $4 million. And then when we apply AI, we're able to see that we're able to do it for roughly 1/10 of that cost right now. And so we are that $1 to $2 million a week we're saving is absolutely based on the cost avoidance of things we must build and must modernize, but we can do it now for a fraction of the cost. So we're trending to 1/10. We're aiming for 1/20 is where we're going as we get better and better at this. We have been able to reduce costs significantly internally using artificial intelligence. And now the majority of our savings is to start to avoid costs by doing things as I see Cohen and the PRISM team here as well. I see others who are taking on major challenges. And I also see that, we are working very productively with all of our vendors who are supporting our systems and developing new systems. We're working very collaboratively to plan how they use artificial intelligence. And so they're able to demonstrate and find savings, and then we're sharing those savings in that space. So good for everybody and reducing our overhead costs through many of our maintenance contracts. So the primary reduction here is doing more with less. And what we've been able to map is that we've already reduced our budget by about $50 million, and we're on track to do it again. And then on our capital project, we're already avoiding saving over $100 million in the year ahead on our capital projects as well. So the savings are absolutely there to be had. Some of it can flow back to Treasury Board. The vast majority of it is cost avoidance. And where we like to free that money up is to strengthen our cybersecurity and invest in new capabilities. We've leveraged that funding to roll out 23,000 licenses of Microsoft Copilot and Google Gemini. So that's an internal reinvestment that we're able to make to further empower our staff. And so we'll continue to find opportunities to reduce costs and enable more people and hopefully achieve a flywheel effect using doing some of that. I think it's 10 o'clock on the dot. So I'll have to, I'm very excited to Corey Jensen and I think team here. So I'm going to get off the stage. Very much thank you all for your participation mentioned today. Big warm welcome to Corey Jansen from AltaML, running our lab program. And I'll see you back up here in about an hour. I'm just going to untape my, so it's a super slippery cable here. Oh my gosh, my computer. So you might want to use the tape.
Around the office, we joke about who's been red pilled by AI more, our CTO or Deputy Janak here, and it's a head-to-head race. But hopefully, you have been as well, and you see the reality that exists today, and not just in the future. How do you actually get started? I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about just that and taking some of these principles from the Velocity white papers and giving a real-life demo of how this could actually come into action. For those who don't know AltaML, we're one of the larger independent AI firms in the country, offices out west here in Edmonton and Calgary, but also Toronto, Waterloo. Most importantly, we have a deep public sector practice. I've been doing this for a lot of years, both through GovLab.ai, our partnership with the GOA, and numerous other Crown Corps and municipalities. Here's the problem. We have this amazing new set of tools that don't know anything about your organization. Even worse, and I love that tornado example, the AI is so damn good, but confidently wrong so much of the time. Well, the reason is that all your information is behind your firewall. That tip of the iceberg doesn't exist in these large language models. Being AI first means giving the AI context around your organization in a form it can actually use. Here's the playbook I'm going to take you through. Massive amount of documents. Every ministry, every government agency has tons of files everywhere. We want to turn that into a memory, both in terms of how we actually do work, as well as our engineering specs, that then ties the specification with which we're going to build applications. Every step along the way, we need to have these audits or checkpoints where the professional, the public servant, can be in the loop. You'll note that at the bottom of the deck here as well, we've added references to elements from the Velocity white papers. As we zoom in on these specific instances, you can go into higher detail with the philosophy. So here's our scenario. We have a new request from the minister. Let's take a fictional ministry running a community granting program, and the minister had said, she said, I committed to the premier that we're going to take applications online. I'm also going to change the program. And yeah, can you get this done yesterday? So this is a fictional example. We've created entire synthetic data for the privacy people in the room. Please, I'm not sharing anything private here from the GOA. But this is a real life use case. We actually have worked on this inside the GOA. And so we've got that subject matter expertise that is informing this work. And I knew that the deputy would pull me off the stage if I stuck in PowerPoint. So here's the application that we built for this. Now, we've actually built a custom application for this demo. Again, with the spirit of taking down the cost of production 90%, I could sit here on my terminal and bore you all with the actual coding work and the back office workflows. So understand this isn't exactly what your team would see, but we've actually built a custom app to expose these core key components so we can learn in this presentation. I'm starting here on what we call the shelf. So here are all these documents. In our case, we've got 600. You probably have tens of thousands. They're everywhere. They're in SharePoint. They're in email. They're in your ERP. They're in ServiceNow. The big change over the last 6 to 12 months is we used to have to kill projects because we'd go in and say, well, where's your structured data? Well, 90% of the data around the world is unstructured. So we're going to take this whole corpus, and now the key is to onboard those into this memory. Now, for the technical people online and in the room, what we're doing here is we're building an ontology. For the non-technical team members, I would say I'm going to use the term memory or institutional knowledge synonymously. I get it that it's not exactly technically correct. But what you see on here is we still want to define how we work with humans in the loop. Every step along the way, the subject matter expert has to be involved as we create this digital twin of our ministry. What's critical is that we can identify the core elements of how we work. So within the ministry, you've got people requirements, you've got various programs, and how they all relate to one another. We're basically taking how we work and turning it into code. What you see on your screen now is a visualization of that ontology. So on the right-hand side, we can see a knowledge graph representing exactly how we work and how we do it. Now, I'm going to bring up this ministerial order. So who's our minister? It's Minister Sandra. She's given us this order. I want to build out this application, and I'm making these changes to this granting program. So we're going to change the nonprofit for 1 year. Let's increase the grant amount size 75 to 125K. Anyway, we've got this particular directive from the minister. Now, keep in mind, this could be from an email. It could be from any other unstructured source of data. It could be sitting in a PDF. What I'm going to do here for the demo is I'm going to add that information to the graph. So as I've clicked this link, I've done a few things have happened. An agent has spawned off in the background and has taken that unstructured data and picked out the key facts. Okay, so yeah, we increased the grant size, so we know that. Okay, we've changed the minimum period of operation. Now here's what this gets really interesting. You notice that the AI is smart enough to say, well, here's how we used to work. But it used to be that we had a 75K limit, not 125K, and we have all the metadata in terms of time stamping that institutional knowledge. This gets really, really powerful. I can't tell you the number of times we've worked with our partners in government and said, well, how is this done? And said, oh, well, the ADM is left and maybe they're in another ministry, and so much stuff, maybe it's in a database somewhere, maybe it's not. Who knows where that database is? Now, if we can create this whole digital twin, and you notice we've highlighted in the knowledge graph the elements and the relationships amongst that data, it's really, really powerful for how we can build an application. So I'm going to get into a pretty geeky thing here. So this is like the spec. So the key, as Deputy mentioned here, is being able to actually know not just how we build, but how the organization runs, but then how we also build. So you're a senior business analyst in the government of Alberta, blah, 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 blah. Create a spec for me to then generate the application. So for the sake of the demo, I'm going to write the spec in 3 ways. So in the first, we have throwing a document in. So this is kind of like, hey, your team member's throwing it into ChatGPT. The second one is, well, you know what, Corey, context windows are way bigger. I use more of the higher end tools. I can throw all of my thousands of documents into this application. And then the third example is using memory. What we've done is we built another set of agents, a judge agent in the back end that says, well, what would this actually be? What's the baseline? And so there's 15 factual questions by which we're grading the results. So as we go down here, you can see for those who haven't seen the spec, here's an overview. Who are the users we need to use this application? What are the requirements? You know, what are the integrations? Compliance people, okay, got privacy and compliance. We haven't forgot about that. Here's the rollout, right? Here's the risks. You can imagine these specs get pretty complicated for some of the applications we're building. But here's the big issue. That confidently wrong, keep that tornado theme. When we just single shot this, it got the old data. It was completely incorrect. The accuracy for single shotting was like 40%. As we move up and we add more data, well, we get better. So systems record, privacy, yeah, you know what, we're okay. But where this really shines, and I'm highlighting here on the engineering standards, within the memory, when we have that ontology, when we have that institutional knowledge, we're at 97% accuracy in terms of what we would have built for that application. This is the critical step because it's garbage in, garbage out. We can now build an application in a way that actually reflects how we work. I'll actually show a little bit. This is a high level that as we went through the AI garage and factory, that took us to the next level. In our case, we're saying, here's our front end standard, here's the tech stack we want to build with, and here's what we know about that program in terms of what the tech is. So we know that we're not building in .NET when it should be Python. So where have we gone so far? We've taken the documents, we've created a memory. From that memory, we now have an accurate spec. Let's compare an app from a good spec to a crappy spec. We've done this in the background. We've shown the front end of this web application. So we actually have two applications shown on the screen here. On the left-hand side, you see the out-of-the-box one-shot, and on the right app B, you see with memory. I want to highlight a couple things here. First of all, the look and feel. Now, this might sound like a small thing, but we're all used to seeing this AI slop, and while we love Claude as much as anybody, I'm a bit sick of these like kind of blue backgrounds everywhere. It needs to be our look and feel. Of course, you've got the garbage in, garbage out problem of the incorrect on the funding. So we've actually got the wrong information on the old app. But here's where it gets really powerful in terms of when we think of the AI factory in a garage. Now, any spec is going to understand we need some form of digital authentication. But in this case, we understand that Alberta has its own specific this authentication scheme that we clearly need to build off. We're not going to build that from scratch. Even more importantly, we know that there's no API endpoint that's handling this real time. So we actually can communicate to the user, hey, you know what? This is going to get in the overnight batch. We're going to be able to actually get to you tomorrow. And you can provide services to a different level because you know more about the internal workings of government. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, Corey, but like turning over my applications to all these agents seems really, really scary. Where's those guardrails? I've got a tab. This is a real terminal running the back end. Again, this whole application code. I'm going to run the actually happen behind the scenes to show you what actually can be done in real time. So that we had 30-something here. But as I go through, number one, the business logic. Did we get the program? Number two, did we get the UX styling? Pretty much bang on. The demo, we didn't fix much of these bugs. So when we go into the application audit, well, look here, we missed an environmental variable. So think of this here. We've seen this happen in real life where thankfully it wasn't our team, but an engineer on the other end with one of our clients, include an API key and their data went across borders. Obviously, that's a big no-no, right? It's really easy to screw up this way when you don't have this code. As we go through and audit the code check and our standards for how we build, I would actually argue that this way of engineering is actually safer than letting a human on its own. And when a human does it, they do it once, but this can be done over and over and over again. And we get to what the deputy was alluding to in terms of that self-heating applications. So what did we cover? Coming back to this method, all of the way we operate is in these unstructured documents. We need to turn that into institutional knowledge that creates really great specs. That is the key to building applications that are sustainable. When we brought in the memory, we managed to bring out all the facts in real time that was not done by a human. Think of the grunt work that we could get rid of in being able to take that memory and have a working knowledge in real time for all of our interactions with our citizens. When we have that memory, the result was near perfect, 97% in terms of what we needed for that spec. One thing I didn't mention is it's actually at a fifth of the cost. It was actually far more effective. And sorry to our friends at the hyperscalers here, but like, yes, we want more tokens, but we want to use them effectively. So this was actually 80% less in terms of generating this spec. And then when we built these applications, not only did we get rid of the confidently wrong areas, but we had an additional level of knowledge to be able to communicate more. And we resulted in an application that's shippable and not just about rework. And of course, safety is key. There's guardrails at every step, humans in the loop. We are not getting rid of engineers. We are empowering our engineers to their full potential. As a side note, we followed the same methodology when we built this app. And when I was testing, I discovered a bug. Now, what you see on your screen is a screenshot from my CTO's phone. And so I go, hey, Mark, I got a bug here. But unfortunately, he was in a meeting. So luckily, though, because he'd built the right AI harness and passed us off, he sent off the bug to the agent. It then just diagnosed it, discovered it, and fixed it in real time. And I'm not bullshitting you. This is a true story. This is actually the screenshot where he's like, got it fixed, boss. Would love to have more than 15 minutes to talk about this, but maybe we'll in the panel. But this technical debt and how we actually get to, a lot of this is covered in Get Insights. This potentially is the most exciting opportunity in government. So we had a bunch of references to the velocity white papers. I'll close with a QR code, and you can see. Happy to send off this deck of all these references. But here's I can beat the deputy for even smaller font the number of times we've referred to elements around the white papers. So let's close with how we started. What do we actually need to do? Number one, follow the playbook, right? These principles, we were very excited to see velocity because it's exactly the direction we saw things going and it's how we want to work. Adoption has to have people at the core. It's about cultural adoption. It's about, yes, ROI, but how do we actually build things that we know is going to improve the data of a public servant? Champions, you need to have the executive leaders. It can't just be IT. You need the subject matter expertise and the executives at the table. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We've got a bunch of good tools. Yeah, maybe they're from large firms, but there's many Canadian firms as well building reusable solutions. And I'm super excited about the open sourcing and being able to take these core tools that can make us all move faster. And last, this is a large conversation, but we can be sovereign. We can build this here. We can be in control of our data and our destiny. Thank you very much for your time. As I mentioned on this QR code, we built a kind of a summary of this if you'd like to be able to take through a playbook for this, summarizing this presentation. And that is my personal cell phone and email. So if you do have, love to be able to talk. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, thanks, Corey, and thanks for the AltaML team. I think that was fantastic and really embodied, I think, in principle, everything we're trying to do. And so it's I'm certainly heartened by that they're pulling it off, they're executing it, and they're bang on all fronts. The knowledge management, the curation of it, the managing of standards. It's exactly the skill set and the mindset that teams need to be adopted. As we will produce less code manually, you can achieve those higher quality outputs, but you become a curator of knowledge, building those ontologies, absolutely crucial. So it really gets us to step back and say, what is the function of government? What are the standards that we must live within? And as Corey was pointing out, and as I've talked about the papers, it drives a higher quality outcome ultimately and highly consistent as well. So it gives you the velocity and the quality. We're not sacrificing quality, safety, security, or integrity of our systems. But we can't afford to say, well, then we just don't get velocity. No, we're going to get all of those together. And building on that idea, I have Cisco up next. So Magna is online, joining us from, I don't know, a beach somewhere, maybe, Magna. I don't know why you're not here with us. But with the factory behind the factory. So please give a warm welcome to Magna from Cisco to walk through their version of this as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janak. It's a beach very soon. I'm heading to the airport right after this. Otherwise, I would definitely be there. I'm Magna. I'm an executive advisor at Cisco. What that means is that I'm helping organizations like Alberta, but also any other Canadian organizations strategize around AI and see how we can help them. What I'm going to present today, we call that the factory behind the factory. It's basically the layer underneath all of the velocity white papers, how we can support the white papers and make that a reality for Government Alberta. But also, I want to focus this presentation around how it could help any of the other either private or public entities like today. And I'll try to avoid as much jargon as possible and make this understandable for even those people that haven't gotten as far as GOA. It is a bold vision that GOA has set for themselves, and it's not an impossible mission. I think that's what's good. We have several clients at Cisco that's done similar things, or at least at large scale, including ourselves. And I'll use that as an example as I'm going to this presentation today. Is Cisco. We were actually using AI at a really large scale already to build products for us, so software, and we're developing AI. We have already a product that you might have bought that is fully written by AI, and we're thinking by the end of the year we're going to have at least half a dozen products that are fully written by AI, where the developers developers are just doing architecture work, develop and doing testing as well as design. We've also deployed, or the process of this month, deploying 90,000 agents, one per employee. So basically a private customized agent for each of our employees, which is an unprecedented large scale. Now, this is where Alberta is headed. It's moving, from 3 billion to 30 billion, building 12,000 agents and thousands of evaluators. And I definitely think this is possible for them, but also any other government. I'm extremely excited about it. The 4 pillars that allow us to do that is across observability. So the ability to see every agent and evaluate its output. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And we can kind of do automatic audit of the agent's work. It's definitely having the infrastructure as you're scaling. It is so does the cost as well as the availability of infrastructure and models, and right sizing those models. And I think sovereignty is also a big consideration. Operating it is not just on an agent level, but also on the fleet level. How do you operate all this infrastructure, these systems that goes along with it, as well as building trust, how we trust the systems, but also how we trust AI in doing its work. Now, for any organization that starts using agents at scale, but also as a beginning at a small scale, they'll be faced with a series of different types of issues. I'll go through some of them. For agents, they typically have tools that they can use. They call it typically like MCP servers. That's a buzzword, so I'll try to avoid that. Or different skills. That's super useful because you have pre-built functions that these agents can use in order to do work for you. However, it also brings with a risk. These skills can be poisoned with if they haven't been vetted correctly, or the MCP servers can actually change on an ongoing basis. They're typically live. So I think the most common example that people refer to here is for one of the most popular skills at some point was what would Elon do? So it's basically a skill that you can give to your agent and it would act like Elon. And it worked really well. It was trending. It was probably at the top of the list of the popularity for a long time. But turns out that skill also had a couple of lines of code that was doing data exfiltration of everything that people gave to the agent. That was just sending all of that data to some unknown endpoint. Another issue that you'll typically stumble upon, it's very normal to inherit the user's access as you're building agents. Now, how do you audit it if it's working with your credentials or your access? How do you know if something goes wrong, that it was the human that acted wrong, or was it an agent or an LLM that had been tricked into doing something wrong? So using human-shaped credentials can definitely be an issue. In terms of oversight, I think there's using AI to look at it is definitely a key. There's going to be so much logs being produced by these agents as you're definitely doing it at scale. But even at just starting with one agent, how do you avoid not having a human needing to read and verify everything it does? Now, the models, they can also be tricked, and Janak has touched upon that in the white paper. So I think you're saying an injection supplies 2 to 5% on the closed source open models. Now, that's a big one. That means that these models that the agents use can actually be altered, and if it's using the same human-shaped access and credential, it can do a lot of stuff. And the last part, which we've seen more and more of, is not necessarily related to agents that you're building, but it's agents coming against you. That's that now bad actors can pretty quickly, in terms of I think 5 hours after a vulnerability has been launched, weaponize that vulnerability, find an exploit, and come into your production system. So how do you stop that? And the last part is just as you're scaling, even if I know there's a lot of agentic developers here, probably the biggest headache you have is that you're being throttled by, by your cloud provider. How are you right sizing the tokens? How are you making sure that you have a big enough pool of tokens that the agents can go and lend from when you're building your garage? Now, a few ways we're doing it at Cisco. We have developed something called this MCP scanner to help you scan the ongoing MCPs as well as skills. Can do that on an ongoing basis because these can change over time. That's open source. You can go grab it. We have developed something called AI Defense. That's a way all the prompts that are going into the model, coming out of the model, and with a really high efficiency rate, stop any attempt in trying to trick it into doing something wrong. We have found a way to give the agents its own credential and name, and also limit the access that it has to just the tasks that it needs to do, the systems that it needs to do for that specific task, and thereby reducing the blast radius in case it still gets tricked, but also increasing the auditability from it. We call that do agentic identity. I won't talk too much about the products. And from observability, we're building a risk score view. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But basically, we built a system for agents to continuously look at all the audit logs of what the agents are doing. For building a risk score as well as not just the risk or the quality score, and being able to automatically stop it if you're seeing that it's on the wrong path. In terms of the exploits, we have a way to actually shield ahead of our patch. I won't have time to talk about it, but it's basically a small little service that we can deploy on our switches and our network and on our firewalls to, as soon as we know a vulnerability, do a micro incision to protect against it, and then give you time to protect against rogue agents outside of your infrastructure. And OpenClaw is a way to sandbox and build Defense Claw is a way to sandbox OpenClaw systems, so agent systems, also something that's open source and available. And the last part is Secure AI Factory, which is, not the AI factory from the government of Alberta, but our way of building scalable, secure infrastructure that can be fully sovereign and sized according to the needs. Now then, the map should look more like this. A lot of green. That's always good instead of a red. But you'll have all the different components mentioned that, tackles each one of the key risks. You'll have infrastructure from some, which is called Secure AI Factory here, that could be sized according to scale. It could be fully run in province and be shielded from any of these exploit attempts before it even gets into your production systems. You'll have agents working on the control to audit and understand what your agents are doing. So agents auditing agents. You'll be able to have one view to look at the bidirectional guardrails to stop any ways of being attacked or trying to trick the AI models, but also the models coming in with something that it was not intended to do, as well as information about their context aware for your systems or what the agents are doing, so they can see what type of activity would be expected versus what wouldn't be expected. And that's what I'll just quickly show here in terms of how the agents are doing its self-audit. And please feel free to stop me if I'm going over time at any point here. The way we do that is, you can't do searching, and you don't want necessarily Splunk is the system that we have, but I'm sure many of you heard about that in its previous state, or any log analytics system was mostly after the fact. After the fact, something went wrong, you could go back into the logs and figure out what went wrong and then go fix it. But then usually it's too late, and especially if you're talking about agents that are running at machine speed, and if they're going off in the wrong direction, they can go pretty far. It doesn't only cost a bunch of tokens, but it can also cost you a lot in terms of damage that it does. So having agents that are watching and not just searching, it's detecting across many different dimensions is what we built and how we're able to scale. We can understand whether it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, or it's starting to do rules that it's, has been retired. We can understand whether there's recurrent errors and therefore stop it because maybe a system is down or something. We can understand if there's a risky behavior and therefore flag it, and for a human to decide whether this should have been stopped or not, as well as functionalities. And you can see if there's a recurring, PDF parser that times out. Okay, maybe you should put it back in the garage and get the PDF library updated. From an inference standpoint, we developed the Secure AI Factory. What it allows you to do in its essence is to start with one GPU and scale out to thousands, having the right infrastructure in terms of networking. Now we're talking, if you want to really geek out, 1.6 terabit switches, which is pretty insane for anyone that knows anything about networking. But having the right switches, but having the right reference architecture, it could be fairly complicated if you do this from scratch. That's why we developed these books. So basically reference architectures that are compliant with everything that NVIDIA has or AMD has or whatever you wanted, to make sure that you can easily scale up to that number of GPUs. And it will be the same management layer in the first GPU as it will be with the 1,000th GPU, the same skill set that your people would require. Another way to manage infrastructure and the cost that comes along with it is using the right model for the problem. I think both Corey and Janak talked about that, and I think in the AI Garage, there's already some kind of an auditor here that is looking at whether the code includes any vulnerabilities or contains any risky assets. And I think all of us saw that pretty recently in the news with Hugging Face. That was, thought it was a bad actor. Turns out it was just OpenAI hacking them. But when they tried to inspect the information that they inspect the actions that these rogue agents did, they tried to use the closed source models, and the guardrails stopped them. So they ended up using a Chinese open source model, GLM 5.2. Now, what Cisco has also developed, fully open weights, just launched this week, is something called Antares. It's fine-tuned small models to localize and identify vulnerabilities. That could be used directly in the AI Garage, as Janak showed, or it could be used as a precursor to like a code mender system that maybe my friends at Google will be talking about later. But it's basically very, very efficiently. It's as you can see on the left side here, it has an as good score as the closed source like frontier models, but at a fraction of the cost, less than $1 per vulnerability to identify.
So, I'm just going to jump in, just in the interest of time. Maybe we can wrap it up. Can you close us off in the last 30 seconds here, and we'll give folks a much needed break in the room.
Will do. So, last part is just having a way to give your agents their own identity, least privilege, as I mentioned before. We also have ways of using agents to manage all of that infrastructure in the estate. I won't talk too much about it. We call it Cisco Cloud Control. Where I'll end it is that we're very committed to open source at Cisco. A lot of the things that I mentioned now is either open source or open weights. You can go and grab it, build it, and integrate together with all of the great work that Government of Alberta is doing. But also, you'll see that some of these systems, as you're scaling, you will need enterprise support, and that's the additional systems that we have here. As a next step, I would encourage any of you to reach out to me or Bob, that's here in the room, from Cisco, and we can identify a use case to make this a reality. So basically take these items, put them all together to show you how you could run agents today securely, safely, and at scale eventually. Thank you, Jenna.
Perfect. Thank you, Magna, and thanks for the presentation. Again, I think it's heartening to see a lot of that engineering that we're talking about starting to come to. Thank you for folks in the room, maybe we could do a 10-minute break. The washrooms are just out into the hallway where you came in, onto, I believe, onto the left. And maybe 10:45, we'll a chance to do a presentation. Then we'll be joined by our minister at that point. seats. I think we're on. So grab your seats here, please. Maybe I can ask TI folks to start shepherding people to their chairs. Not a bar setup. Sit down. Sit down. Hey, everybody. Let's resume our program. Time is upon us. All right. Thanks, everybody. Make your way back to your chairs. We're gonna return to the third presentation here on the last airbender. No, on the last code mender. Sorry. So as everyone's getting seated, thanks. Welcome back from the break, everybody. We're going to be picking up now with our third presentation. I have Mike Cragen here on behalf of the Google team, and he's going to be presenting some amazing new technologies that they have. Hey, you guys! Let's try that one. I don't know if you know that from the 80s. Yeah, people know it, right? All right. So over to you, Mike, from Google to talk through Code Mender.
Well, hello, and thank you, Janak. Thanks for having us. And this is a great event. Great to see everyone showing out. So, it's really exciting just to see the Velocity white papers kind of come to fruition. We've been working with the government of Alberta for quite a while on it, and kind of have some fingerprints all over it. Love the innovation that's coming out of you guys, and we're just happy to partner. And I'm here today. We're going to talk through a relatively recent addition to sort of the lineup here at Google. So it actually just came out for public consumption last week. So the folks over at DeepMind have put together an agent called Code Mender to really help kind of address some of the problems that we're seeing. Right. So as AI is coming out and the rapid rate that you can scale and how fast everything's happening now, it really has made it a non-trivial task to try and keep up with all the different security vulnerabilities, right? You hear in the news, whether it's, Mythos getting held back from getting released to the general population, or some of the advanced capabilities that are coming out of OpenAI. And as well as this is sort of our foray into this space, right? Being able to iterate at speed with the technology continuing to evolve is something we're really excited about. The sophistication that we're seeing and the ability for AI to chain different small exploits together to make something, a very large exploit and potentially take over entire systems is a very real situation, right? So being able to address this at speed is something that we're really focused on, right? So over the last few years, microphone here. Over the last few years, right? So we've seen, a dramatic drop in the mean time to an exploit. So what that means is once we've discovered a vulnerability in a system, how long does it take before we start seeing some people using that vulnerability to actually exploit a system? So back in 2020, the average time was about 1.3 years. And now, just as of last week or a couple of weeks ago, it's about 1.5 days now. So once these get discovered, AI is doing a lot of the discovery of these, right? And we're also seeing, because of AI, the number of vulnerabilities getting exposed has increased, right? So we were roughly 20,000 vulnerabilities a year back in 2020, and again, we're up over 80,000 a year now, and that's kind of continuing to escalate, right? So this is a big problem where we're starting to see this huge vulnerability gap, right? So now getting people involved, like the mean time to repair those vulnerabilities is largely flat, whereas we're seeing that exponential growth. So this gap is continuing to grow, and there's no way to really combat it other than use AI to kind of fight against the AI, right? And we're always stuck on the defender side. You have this problem where you have to patch every hole, where as an attacker, they just have to find one to get through the system. So how do you actually counteract this? Right. So at Google in general, so across all of our web properties, so whether that's YouTube or ads or, the Chrome, everything that we're doing, this is sort of how we've attacked threat defense in general. And so this is, the culmination of decades of operating these massive billion user scale systems. And a lot of the good work that's been going on at DeepMind, right? So it's this loop, right? So in AI, we're seeing a lot of these loops. So going from preparation to kind of scanning and prioritizing, identifying how we're remediating that, and then kind of monitoring that again and keeping this going in a, basically a forever loop. And so this is where CodeMender comes in. And what it really does is three primary things, right? So it's going to use LLMs, not just Gemini, although we do have a number of new models that are specifically focused on cyber defense, but any models across the gamut. So again, whether they're going to be from third-party, closed source competitors, or if they're open weight models, the ability to use this agentic harness to scan, to verify. So not just being able to say, hey, there's a CVE here that looks like it might be a problem for you, but actually having the tool develop that exploit, use it in a sandbox environment for you and say, yeah, no, this is actually a real exploit. And then developing a patch and then pushing out a PR or a patch onto your system in order to actually remediate this. Right, so, and largely what CodeMender is, it's an agent, or it's a harness, if you will, that has a number of different tools and honed skills, again, that we've developed through the operation of all the Google properties, as well as the research at DeepMind. A number of prompts that are in there, sort of the models of choice, again, 3.5, all the different Flash models, all the different Gemini models, as well as this is rolling out. It just came out last week, so we're introducing Anthropic and OpenAI and all the open weight models as well. So again, running your code through this harness in order to scan it, to validate, again, develop those risks, and then patch it. So again, I don't want to get too in depth in detail, but we will run through a demo. So it's actually, the tool itself is an agent. It's largely just command line. So put together a bit of a demo here using, again, some vibe coding to build something that's a little more visual. Oh, did that not share? Sorry. Second here. All right, so this is an illustrative of what the tool CodeMender can do once it comes up here. All right, so we're looking at this OWASP Juice Shop is a sort of a fictional application. It's a real application, but designed with a number of vulnerabilities in it. So what CodeMender does, it looks at it, it runs through the code, it says, hey, you've got 12 vulnerabilities that you really need to address. 3 of those are critical, 7 high, 2 medium, and so we look at the application here. We can scroll down. The 3 different critical ones are sort of put up here. So a SQL injection attack is really when an attacker finds a way through some sort of form or format that you have in order to put some malicious code in your backend and allow you to expose user credentials or something of that nature. So we found a couple of different ones like that, as well as, again, just a hole in the code that allowed an attacker to submit a password change for a user without actually having the original password. So again, this isn't done through just the website. It's done typically through sort of the back-end console. So we'll have a look at sort of the SQL injection attack here. Again, just in the interest of time, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds. So just keeping it at a high level, right? So the injection attack here, it looks like it's basically like slipping the doorman a note and saying, ignore the guest list, and he just lets you in, right? So this is, it largely gives you some synonyms around what's happening here. So this is an attack where they're going to allow the user to sort of put some quotes in the back end, and just the way that the query was designed wasn't optimal and it allowed for this to work. So what CodeMender actually does, again, so this is the CLI side of it. It's going to go through, you're going to run a command. So you would typically bake this into your release cycle or the way that you're using your application. It's going to run through, kind of look at the login TypeScript. It's going to go through a search. It's going to look at how change passwords happen. And it's going to say, hey, I found all these vulnerabilities, and this is where it identifies it. As a next step, it's going to look at what is it? It doesn't just take those vulnerabilities at face value. Now it actually starts to build that exploit, right? So, a sample here, what this would look like is somebody's put the right string in here in order to, spoof the login and allow them to change their password. So, hey, CodeMender confirm, yeah, this is a real exploit. I can make it happen in your sandbox environment. somebody's now logged in as the administrator, and that just leads to a lot of bad news for whoever's operating the site. So what CodeMender does is it went in there, it sort of ran through the different routes and the different login profiles, goes in here, it comes up with a plan on how it's actually going to build this exploit. It looks at all the different words involved in it. It runs those commands, and then it says, hey, I've successfully exploited this. So yeah, this is something that we seriously need to look at and write a remedy for, right? So it goes through here, it's verified that. And then next, again, kind of operating at AI speed, right? So it's going to validate that the fix actually works. So it's going to give you, a diff around what the code change is. And this is where the human comes in, right? So now the CodeMender is just producing all of these results for you. You're going to have your security team or a human in the loop come in here and actually validate that, hey, this isn't, this hasn't broke our system. We haven't done any regressions. So there's still like that diligence that has to happen. But this is, pushing out the fixes at a much faster pace than traditionally we have, right? So this is here's the proposed fix. In this example, we're going to kind of rerun the same attack. So again, using some tools in the back end to actually simulate the web traffic and the browsing, and we'll say, hey, previously this was blocked, and now previously we broke in, and now this is blocked. So this is that's great news. Again, kind of the boring side of stuff, that the way that the agent actually happens, it's going to go through and it's going to write the patch. It's going to prove that it works. It's going to submit that as a fix to your version control system, and then you'll be able to go in there and fix it, right? So what we're seeing is nothing ships without your sign off, right? So you're going to have an actual diff that gets shipped. We've submitted an actual PR. So what a human reviewer would see is, we can navigate to the GitHub link where this actually happened. We can kind of see exactly specifically what happened. Say it was CodeMender that put this together. The team's going to be able to work through there and either accept or modify this. But what we're seeing kind of internally using this is roughly about 80% of these get approved sort of without any modification, right? So again, really shortening that mean time to exploit and being able to block this proactively, right? So as quick as the AI is, it still needs that oversight. So I know I'm under the gun here. This was meant to be a real quick demo. So we will jump back into too many windows. Guys. Sorry, I am. I lost the window here. Way too much stuff going on. I should have. All right, so sorry about that. So back here, and then we'll jump back into presentation here. And so this fits into sort of the overall AI threat defense scenario that we have at Google, right? So we recently finished the acquisition of Wiz, which they're doing some fantastic stuff on the agentic discovery and the mapping of sort of all of your assets and giving you a real view of the threat vectors that we have in that space. Integrating that to our Mandiant professional services. I think this is a real unique offering in the market. We're excited to kind of bring it here and join everyone in the voyage along their agentic transformation. So with that, I think it's really aligned with some of the goals that the government of Alberta has around, specifically around kind of that paying down the technical debt, really helping remediate some of the legacy code to the AI garage, making sure that you've got those self-healing apps kind of going through the AI factory. Really democratizing security, because we want to give everyone as much of a leg up on their attackers as we can. It's got the ability to sort of transform the way that you're doing continuous integration and continuous delivery, so that these apps again have are powered by the leading edge models and multiple models too, right? So, we often run things through like 3 or 4 different models internally, and each one will find different vulnerabilities, different exploits, and this continues to evolve. So it's really a platform, and we're really excited to embrace the open nature of all of the different innovation that's happening across the industry. So I think with that, that's right on time.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks for the presentations. I'm really pleased that our partners could come today and provide this feedback and this insight. This is exactly the point of this open engagement, this open dialogue. We need to learn from each other, and today what you've seen are facets, I think, of the overall how we engineer our way through some of these pieces, and hopefully for our folks online and folks in the room, you're starting to see some of these patterns evolving, right? So a year ago, we weren't having this conversation. 6 months ago, we weren't yet having this conversation around what AltaML pointed out today. We didn't have the integrated view that Cisco put forward, and we didn't have tools like CodeMender that Google put forward. So as the, one of those mosquitoes right there. Look at that one. It's the size of a friggin' bird. And so as the models get better, we're really layering over now with this capability layer, and we're introducing knowledge management, and we're introducing better vulnerability detection and patching and repair. And so this is the scale as we're moving up that capability layer. And so thank you for the presentations. We're going to move into the final third of our session today. And as you know, we have a panel conversation. I'll be moderating it, and we've got a great set of panelists coming up. But first, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our minister, the Honorable Nate Glubish, who's going to be sharing some remarks around everything that we're doing within technology and innovation, and a broader vision of where things are to come. So, Minister Glubish, please.
Thank you, Janak. And thanks everybody for being a part of the Velocity Symposium. I'm really excited that we were able to host this and really get a bunch of our fellow tech nerds in a room and gathered virtually to talk about what is the future of public service digital delivery look like? What does innovation in the public service look like? How does AI impact everything we're doing? And how can we work together to serve the citizens of every jurisdiction across Canada better through technology? I understand you've had some great conversations this morning already. Thanks to Janak and the team for putting all this work together. I'm going to do what I usually do and just go off script. When I first became Minister of Technology and Innovation, when Premier Smith gave me this mandate to focus solely on running the technology backbone of government and focusing on the innovation ecosystem across this province, I took that as a challenge to say, how can we do something really special? And I talked to and I made sure they knew that our goal is to make Alberta one of the most innovative jurisdictions in North America. We want to be a leader in public service innovation. Alberta has always been a leader in AI research. We've been pioneers of AI research for 25 years. We have the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute here, and that has led to a significant amount of talent and technological capacity that is here. So it also would make sense for us to be leaders in AI adoption as a public service and to lead by example and to show the world what is possible if we use tools correctly and at scale. And so we began working on a plan to say, well, what would that look like and what do we need to do to get there? Well, one of the things we need is a team that is capable of using AI. I wanted to make sure that we could say that every public servant in the Alberta government was not just AI literate, was AI proficient. I didn't just want to say that everybody knew how to open up a ChatGPT window and ask it a question or load a document into there and say, explain this to me. All of you in this room know that AI is far more powerful than that. I wanted to make sure that everybody in the public service would know how to use the tools the right way every day in every aspect of their work. And so we set a vision to say that within the next 2 to 3 years, we want every single public servant to be able to say, yes, I am AI proficient and I know how to use this. I don't need to be a software developer. I don't need to be a computer scientist. It doesn't matter what my background is or what my skill set is. I have the understanding, the tools, the techniques, and the training to thrive as an AI native worker in this government. And so we got to work, and the team built the Alberta AI Academy, which many of you would be familiar with. If you haven't checked it out yet, I'd encourage you to do so. It's available at albertaaiacademy.com, and it is free. It's our gift to you. It's our gift to every jurisdiction across this country and around the world. And since we've launched this, I believe we have over 20,000 people, Janak, who are enrolled and using this tool so far. At least 2,000 of them are from the government of Alberta. And this is a tool where we said it's designed for public servants. It's designed to say what do you need to know to be able to thrive as an AI user in the public service? And that has led to a significant transformation in our culture and our capabilities. I know Janak's talked about some examples already of how we've used AI across our organization, but I'll tell you one story because I like to make this relatable. I know you guys have talked a lot of theory and a lot of technical stuff. Let me just talk about something relatable to a layperson for a second, because I'm the most layperson person in this room. One of my employees, his name is Harish, and he's an expert in contracts. He's an expert in our ERP system. He's not on the executive team. He's not in the deputy minister's office. He's a vital member of our team, and he's got a very specific skill set. And he went through the level 2 of our AI Academy training. And that was a very exhaustive training session. Had to take some time away from his day job in order to go to that training. And so when he went back to the office after all that training was done, and he took stock of all of the work that he had on his to-do list, he looked at a couple of things and he said, you know what? I have this one project that I have to work on. It is to migrate 1,500 contracts, many of which are 300 to 400 pages long, highly technical. I need to migrate them into our ERP system so that every executive in the government can see those contracts. They can see every clause. They can understand and digitally interact with it and make better informed decisions government-wide. And nobody else could do it because he's the expert in contracts and he's the expert in the ERP system. And he took stock of saying, how long is this going to take me doing it the old way? It was going to take him 15 months of full-time work, manually going through every single clause and mapping it into the system. Well, thank goodness Harris took the training, because he said to himself, you know what, I now know that there's a better way. And he got to work. And he used the tools and the techniques and the training we gave him. We used the agentic fleet that we had given him. And he was able to build an enterprise-grade application on his own that met all of the government of Alberta standards, all of our cybersecurity standards, all of our data governance standards. And then when he turned it on, it completed the migration exercise in 2 minutes. And it cost $1.12 in AI compute infrastructure. Think about that for a second. 15 months of full-time work done in an instant. That's the transformative power of AI. That's why we want to be the most AI native government in North America. That's why we want to lead by example. That's why we created the AI Academy. And that's why we're sharing it with all of you. So I mentioned that this changed our culture and our capabilities. That's one example of a capability that we have developed. And think about it for a second. You know, a lot of people say, is AI coming for our jobs? And you have all the fear mongers saying, we're going to lose all these jobs. Do you think Harris is any less valuable to us today after having gone through that exercise? Do you think that because he automated 15 months of work, that all of a sudden we can say, oh, we don't need you anymore? Absolutely. He's more than ever before because he's more capable. He's having more fun than ever before because he can see the impact of his work. But what about culture? Well, when I learned about the story, when Janak filled me in on this, I'd never met Harris. I have 1,400 people that work in my department. I don't get to interact with all of them on a one-on-one basis. But Janak told me the story about Harris, and I said, this is a story that Albertans need to know about. So I wrote a column in my Substack. And I've got some folks who are going to handle some cards a little bit later today that has all the details on how you can find my Substack column. But I wrote about this, and I celebrated. I called him out and said, look what Harris did. This is awesome. And then the premier saw the post and she said, this is awesome. We need more of this. And so she started sharing it and bragging about Harish. Well, do you think that made Harish feel pretty good? Do you think that the folks across our department started to say, wow, what did you do, Harish? How did you get the attention of our minister and the premier bragging about what you're doing? Well, the answer is I took the AI Academy training. I learned the tools and the techniques. I now know how to use AI every single day across my entire workflow. And I can now take the initiative to apply it in everything I do. And I did it, not expecting the accolades, but hey, guess what? When we do cool things for the people that we serve, we're going to get recognized. So we're trying to create a culture of recognition and a culture of enablement, a culture of empowerment. And my goal as minister is to inspire my team to say, be like Harish, take the training, use the tools, and change the world. You're all here today at the Velocity Symposium because you've heard somewhat about our Velocity White Papers. The Velocity White Papers is our roadmap that we have published to tell the world how do we do what we did to lead to stories like Harris's story. And so we're here today to talk about and get into the details and to what does it actually take to do this at scale. Getting into the nerdy details about how do you do this safely, how do you do this securely, how do you make sure that you've checked all the cybersecurity balances and make sure that you are dealing with your data governance correctly, you're dealing with privacy correctly. We have evaluated all those things. We have thoughtfully considered all of those things. And while we can't say that we've arrived and that we're perfect and that we will never have room for improvement, we can say that we've made a lot of progress. And we're really proud of what we've done. And we want to share it. This is our gift to you. This is our gift to Canada and the rest of the world, is to say, we all need to come together and leverage modern technology to change the world. We can't leave this transformational power only to the private sector. We need to adopt it in the public service as well. And so our goal is through these white papers to say, we've made progress. We want to share it with you. And our invitation now is join us, read the papers, apply what you've learned, test it, critique it, and share with us what you find. We don't have all the answers. We want to surround ourselves with other like-minded, innovative, ambitious jurisdictions to say, how can we work together to build on this initial foundation of the Velocity White Papers so that each and every one of us can move faster and deliver better, higher quality, more secure services to the public and save our taxpayers money. Throughout all of these exercises, we've had a couple of instances where we have been able to design and deliver a technological solution for 95% cheaper than what the best bid was from the private sector. We had one project that the best bid was $54 million over 3 years. And instead, because we didn't have $54 million, how many of you can relate to that? All my government friends in the room raise their hands. We didn't have $54 million, but we needed to solve the problem. So we said, there's got to be a better way. Let's use what we've learned. Let's use the roadmap in the white papers. And we were able to develop a solution for $2.5 million. And we had the first version working inside of 10 months. We'll have the final version done 8 months from now. 2.5 million instead of 54. That's a 95% savings. We have done it as proof that you can do it too. And the white papers will show you how. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't work with the private sector. I know we have many private sector partners in the room. We see you, we value you, and we can't succeed without you as well. The white papers show a roadmap on how we're going to work together, government to government, government to private service or private sector. AI has changed the way everything is done. We need to adapt. That means that we are going to work differently with the private sector. That means we're going to work differently government to government, but that doesn't mean there's not room to work together. It just means that we're going to spend money on different things and on different priorities. On the government to government side, I know we just signed a deal with the province of Quebec. We're really excited to work with them to unlock real opportunities of sharing our lessons in AI and digital delivery and cybersecurity. This is an invitation to every other province in this room. We'd love to work with you too. When it comes to the private sector, we want to tap into the best and the brightest minds in Alberta and across Canada to leverage the expertise that our businesses have and to build on the insights from the symposium. We anticipate the next $100 to $200 million that we spend on IT procurement, it will be focused on agentic engineering, observability, and sovereign compute. There's lots of room to work together. And I'll just wrap up with one more story in hopes that this inspires each and every one of you to join us in this journey. One of the exercises that Janak and the team applied, the principles we've talked about today at this symposium to tackle, is that we needed to understand what exactly is the size and scope and status of our technology estate. We have over 1,400 different applications. Many of them are 30 or 40 years old. I think a lot of you can relate to that too. Well, we developed a system to scan every single line of code, over 400 million lines of code. And we found that 30% of that code was undocumented. How many of you can relate to that? Old, out-of-date code that somebody wrote years and years ago and they didn't document it. So we identified that and we were able to automatically document the code so that going forward, everybody knows what every line of code does. We were also able to do, I know there's been a lot of talk about cyber vulnerabilities. We were able to assess the cyber security vulnerabilities of every line of code and prioritize the patching and remediation of all of that. That scan, you can imagine manually, it would have taken years for a team of several developers. We did it in 20 hours. For what, $2,000 for compute? Best $2,000 we ever spent. And now we actually understand what is the magnitude of our technology, our legacy technology debt. Every government in this country has the same problem. We knew it was big, but we couldn't put a number to it. And we couldn't articulate how long it was going to take to fix it. But what we found is that if we were using my existing budget, because how many of you can relate to Treasury Board saying no? All of you? Yes? Okay. Well, with my existing budget, which I know is not going to increase, if I were using the old way of modernizing our systems, forget about adding new features, forget about building new tools when the Premier comes and says, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? I'm sure I can't be the only one that happens to. Just focusing on existing systems and bringing them into the year 2026. It was going to take us 130 years. That's sink in for a second, 130 years. In other words, it was virtually impossible to remedy our technology, our legacy technology debt. Today, with the tools we have built, with the roadmap we have shared, with the code and the agents and the AI harnesses that we have published for all of you to use, we now have a credible path without a single dollar more to solving this in 4 years in a single electoral mandate. That is the transformative power of AI. And that is what we as public servants need to be focused on. So thank you for joining us today at the symposium. I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into where we've come from in Alberta in just a few short years and what our passion and our goal is. And I hope this inspires you to say, let's join together and work with Alberta and let's lead this country to a better place. Let's show the world that Canada can be the most innovative country in the world and that we can have the best public services and the best value for our taxpayers. It is possible today. Today it is possible to do what was impossible yesterday, and that is through responsible use of AI. The Velocity White Papers is our answer to that question of how to do it. We've shared it with all of you for free. We've shared the AI Academy with all of you for free, and we invite you to use it, critique it, give us feedback, and let's work together to make it even better. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to invite the panel up. So thank you, Minister Glubish, for your remarks. And I think that's the perfect spirit to kick us off. So if I could invite up Natasha Clark with the amazing shoes. Thank you, Natasha. John Cousins from Google. Corey Jensen from AltaML. And in person, Jeremy Crossman from Microsoft, and I'll stay over in my corner here to moderate. Online, we have Cole Churon from Infotech, And Magna, I believe, is still online from Cisco. And so those are our two online panelists. And so thanks. We'll let everybody get settled here. And I'm just going to share my screen to put the questions up for all of you to have a little read along. And we'll kick off. So thanks. So to the panel, and maybe I don't know, maybe Natasha and Jeremy, I'm going to kick it off with you two in order because we've heard from Google, AltaML, Cisco, and also I'll kick it to you. So we've set a bold vision today, and in your significant experience in government transformation, what do you think the biggest challenges we're going to face might be? Is Alberta ready to do this, and is Canada ready to be a global leader in digital government?
Hi.
Are you on?
Can you hear that?
Yes,
Can you hear
there you
this? Okay, perfect. I've never had a volume issue in the past, so so first off, I have to say just absolute kudos to you, Minister, you Deputy, and your team. When I have been digesting, and I'm digesting the white papers, what it put me in mind of was around 2012, when I was with the province in Nova Scotia, considering kind of digital transformation and digital government transformation at that time, and how important the work the Government Digital Service in the UK was doing in terms of working in the open and sharing the things that they were doing. So yes, they were making some impacts inside of the UK public service, but more importantly, they were actually kickstarting a whole movement globally. This feels to me very familiar and very much like this is potentially the next movement that public sector has an opportunity to latch onto. I think Canada needs this now more than ever. We have productivity challenges. We don't need to talk about the global climate. So I, as a former public servant, am very excited about what you're doing here, but also the opportunity and the potential for the rest of public sector entities across not just Canada, but across the globe to work in collaboration, to take what you're doing here and work in a very different way. I think that Alberta is already leading in Canada. And I think that public servants in the rest of this great nation should be reading these papers, reaching out and signing more of those MOUs that you've just signed with Quebec.
No, great. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I think for me, when I think about this, and I'm going to kind of work backwards from maybe, is Alberta ready for this? So kind of a bit of background for myself. I'm originally from New Brunswick, but I've been out here for about 26 years. So kind of keeping it short, my story ended up that I was supposed to come out west for a summer role for 3 months. Fast forward 26 years and I'm still here, which kind of leads into, why I think this geography is really ready and kind of extending it to Western Canada. I mean, one of the things in Edmonton, if you're from here, you might know, is the saying, still in Edmonton. The other one is that take a risk. It's the most Edmonton thing you can do. And so the reason I bring that up is that the thing that really kept me here in Western Canada was really kind of that innovative entrepreneurial spirit. And I think what's really exciting me now is that we're really starting to see that really transform and move into government of Alberta, for example. So I really kind of commend, Janak and Nate Glubish for kind of, the work that you guys have been doing, because it's really kind of embodying that. In terms of kind of the challenges, one of the things that comes to mind for me a lot is that when we look at AI, it has the potential, as we've seen, to kind of really accelerate different types of activities that you're doing. One of the things I think we really need to take pause on is that before we start injecting AI into all of the processes that we currently have, is we have to start asking, like, are those the right processes? Do we even want to accelerate them? So do we want to do more of something that is not great a lot faster? Or do we want to make sure that it's kind of adapted and been modernized? So I think to do that, we need to kind of shift our mindset and look at things from the perspective of, I always think of moving from process to practice. And what I mean by that is that, if we don't address the modernization of what we're doing in terms of process, and we don't take advantage of what AI can do, we just end up getting stuck in our ways doing them wrong. If we move to more of a practice mindset, that gives us kind of more an adaptive way of thinking, and then allows us to kind of address the changing needs of government as they start to emerge. So yeah, just.
So thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, Natasha. I'm going to go to Cole online, Cole Tron from Infotech. So Cole, we're going to test out our AV here. Over to you if you want to jump in on this one too.
Thanks so very much, Janak, and thanks everyone for having us here today. It's been a real privilege to be on the journey with this. And when I see this question, I want to sort of jump to the middle. Is Alberta ready to be this leader? Well, I think it's patently obvious that you don't publish the white papers, you don't hold events like this if you don't want to lead. And certainly as we look across the fundamental elements that you put in place inside the program, you're making all the right moves to lead this transformation. The thing that's interesting, I think, lies in the questions around it, right? What are the biggest challenges we'll see? And is Canada ready to be a global leader in this? And this is where I think it gets really, really interesting as you tackle this. You can build the machine, but I've always said if you build it, they won't come. When I look at the challenges here, it's not the tech, it's not the centralization of technology delivery so that you can manage this. It's not the distribution of the capability out to people to use it. I think the biggest challenges are going to lie when this runs up against sort of the fundamental models of government in Canada. When we look at the Westminster model, and you bring a model of technology delivery that brings complete transparency to it, Westminster's always kind of liked that management of the fog. How much do you really want to let out into the wild? And are we really prepared, I guess, in the lines of the movie? And are we ready for the truth? And I think that's the part that I find most interesting about this. Like, I think the challenge we're going to see is a reticence to adopt this kind of radical change in other jurisdictions when people are afraid of the accountability that comes with it. And I think if Alberta and Canada is going to really be a leader in digital government, I think it comes with identifying where is the willingness to take accountability for all of this. Because you can deliver software faster, you can get people to adopt it, you can build trust across boundaries. But if somebody isn't going to be accountable for the outcomes created through technology, if we see the kind of excuses like we saw from OpenAI when the agent that they let out into the wild, deliberately or not, did a bad thing, without accountability, there is a real boundary to the future here in this. And so I think the pieces are all there. The complete transparency, which is a different question, so I won't go into that, is a way to create that kind of accountability, which is great. I think Westminster is up for a brutal shock when that happens, but I think that's the right kind of shock, because this is the kind of future we need to create, because the changes you're talking about, the speed, the economy for taxpayers, there's going to be a price to pay, right? And it's not jobs or anything else. It's going to be our willingness to let stuff hide in the shadows.
Thanks, Cole. We have a couple more questions, but just before we wrap, does anyone on the panel want to? Oh, Natasha wants to go again. But we'll let Corey go on the next one. Go ahead.
And it's of course yes to the vision. I mean, that's an easy yes. I think the biggest challenge on what we see is around mindset. Education will get there. Around procurement, and this new way of doing things isn't set up for both the old rules and the old incumbents. So I'll give you in our private sector business, for example, we work in the legal space quite a bit. We're looking for law firms that want to go beyond the billable hour. The billable hour doesn't make sense anymore. And so productizing those professional services is a massive opportunity that will change the entire economy across engineering, accounting, everything that is by that hour. So now we come to Minister Glubish's perfect examples. If one of the Canadian tech startups like ourselves comes in and says, hey, you know what? That problem that you were going to put out for 20 or 30 million bucks, I think I can do that for 2 or 3. There's no way for me to actually sell my services. Being able to say we can bring a bunch of IP to the table, it can sit in Canadian hands. We've got this mindset issue here where just because somebody is an American firm, we think they're better. Well, they're not. We've got the talent here. and we can keep the IP here, and we can keep control here. What we need, though, is that education in terms of saying, if I want to take that technical risk, how can we open it up to the entire ecosystem so we can say, hey, that $20 million project, I'm going to do it for 2. And if I screw up, that's on me. I'm willing to put skin in the game. How do we create a mentality that opens up these opportunities? Because at the end of the day, who's going to benefit? Our citizens. We're going to keep the ownership here. We're going to keep control here. And we're going to be able to actually do these services at literally 80. MSA material, but a whole lot more. So we're coming for every single MSA that's time materials because we want to build better software. We want to improve the life of public servants, and we want to create technology that serves our citizens. We just need a level playing field to do so.
So that's a good segue into question 2. So we kicked off this session in terms of talking about transparency. I can tell you the many reasons that popped up in our mind as to not release the white papers, to not release the data sets, to not release the code, to not release anything, and to simply do things the old way. And we have exercised a great amount of, I think, well, first of all, deeply appreciative of our Minister Glubish for his leadership and his willingness to give us space and to encourage the department to go and be open and share this. And we've open sourced a lot of the patterns and the tool sets. And so, I think that's made all the difference for us. It certainly helped us to find, find the partners and drive the dialogue. The question on the screen and the question I would have to the panel is, how does this insight drive the investment and partnership that we're looking for? And is there something more that we could be doing at this point? I don't know if you want like an X-ray or something or some blood work. I'm not sure what else to give you at this point, but what more could we be doing to really drive those outcomes that we're looking for?
So I'll start and then eager to hear what advice the panel has. For me, I'm not going to talk about what additional steps. I'm just going to say why I think it's important that we do this open source. And it touches a bit on what Corey said, is the way in which these types of solutions are now can be delivered has completely changed. And we've had some examples in-house where we've built things for 95% cheaper for 95% less time. Corey's seen that in his own practice. We know that it's possible. We know that the traditional time and materials billing system is out of date and it's not here to stay. And so our goal through all of this is to say, well, here's our roadmap. We're doing things. And we invite everybody to join us in that journey. If you're going to bid on doing work for us the old way, you're probably not going to win the bid. That's part of our message through these papers. But if you're willing to work with us and say, hey, we think we can help you to do it using this new technology and these new techniques, and we can do it for 95% less and still make a good margin for ourselves, great. The thing is, we at the government of Alberta know that that's possible. So if you're going to come and bid to us and say, no, we want to bid at 100% of what we used to, the way we would have done this 2 years ago. Well, I know that you're doing it for far less and you're keeping all of that for yourself. I don't want partners like that. I'm not going to do business with partners like that. But if you are honest about what your AI capabilities are and you say, no, we can do it for 90% less, and we can still make a good business model out of it. Those are the kinds of partners we want to do business with all day long. So some of the work we're going to do in-house because we have been building that culture and those capabilities. Some of this we are going to continue absolutely to partner with the private sector across Alberta, Canada, and the US. We want the best minds possible on every task, helping us to solve these problems. But you got to be honest about your AI capabilities. And we need to think about a new business model that works for the public as well as the partners. And our message through these white papers is we are a more sophisticated customer today than we were 2 years ago. So make sure that you become a more sophisticated partner so that we can work together.
down on your choice to open source things. Yeah, there we go. So I'll double down on the open source. I got to Google 7 years ago, and first week on the job, say, okay, we open source Kubernetes, okay. Open source TensorFlow, which is the machine learning language everybody uses. We open source neural networks and the transformer technology that Jeffrey Hinton and his DeepMind team at Toronto created. So now everyone uses all these things. So the open source model that you're doing will create investment and partnership opportunities. At first I was questioning why wouldn't we keep proprietary and make more money off of these technologies? So it is raise all boats. So by being that bow wave, bit of a tall poppy, we have to defeat that tall poppy syndrome in Canada with what you're doing as well. But that bow wave will drive the investment and the partnership. I think what I've seen at scale will do that.
Got my on? Okay. I wanted to kind of maybe look at things maybe from a different perspective as well. So one of the things I'm really interested about to hear from maybe from Minister Glubish is that I think that what this does is it really opens and democratizes access to competition, not just from, I'll say, hyperscalers, SIs, smaller boutique firms, but what about kind of so I remember in the early days when I was an entrepreneur, it was really hard for me starting up to really compete against kind of the big guys. So what does it look like from a citizen perspective, right? So citizens now having the ability, the transparency, the tools, the data sets, the problems of government to maybe even step up as individual teams, small teams, private teams, right? So now you actually have kind of this concept of citizen scientists, citizen engineers now contributing back into the transformation of the government of Alberta themselves.
Yeah, great question. I don't know how much time we have to go on a deep dive on procurement reform, but I will make an effort to do just a quick treatment of that. We need to change the way we buy things as a governments. And I'm not talking about roads and hospitals and schools and whatnot. That's not my wheelhouse. I'm talking about how do we buy. And so AI is giving us the ability to completely re-engineer that process. So there's a policy angle of like, what are the rules that we need to follow in order to make sure that we protect the interests of the taxpayer? There's a lot of rules there for good reasons, right? You don't want fraud. You don't want corruption. You don't want politicians making decisions about who to give a contract to. That's a terrible idea. So you want to have a system in place that you can say, we followed the rules, we followed the process, and we've defended the taxpayers' interests. But we also need to make sure that we marry that up with how are we getting the best outcome on the product too. And what I've seen in practice is that the procurement stuff, with good intentions, that whole checks and balances system has become engineered to make it almost impossible for a new entrant to do business with the government. It's made it impossible for small players to bid on and successfully secure a contract. It's engineered to make things easy for the bureaucrat in charge of procurement and hard for the bidder, and oblivious to what's in the best interest of the public. I've heard stories where sometimes the RFP was written in such a way that deliberately it would only have 2 bidders that were familiar to the evaluation team, because they didn't want to review 20 bids. They wanted to review 2, and they didn't want to have to vet new bidders. They wanted to deal with people they trusted and understood. And that broke my heart, because that's not what the system was intended to do. That's not what the public expects of their government. But that was what the system had evolved into. And again, ministers like me don't want to get involved, because I don't want to get the risk of someone saying, you directed them to do this and then it didn't go well, and you were just doing it to enrich your friends. So I have to be very, very careful to not compromise, as a minister. But on the flip side, I don't want to accept that mediocrity that has become a commonplace across governments all around the world. So we are developing something called procurement as code, and if Janak wants to do a deeper dive on this now, or maybe in a future session, if there's interest. But we are using AI to completely re-engineer the procurement process. We want to get better at documenting and publishing what is the problem that we're trying to solve, because one of the enemies of an RFP is a vaguely written RFP, so nobody really knows what you want. Well, then only the big consulting firms will ever bid on it, because even though they don't know what you want, they know that they can figure out how to get there, and they'll just charge you an arm and a leg to get there. And all the little guys who might have been the better technological partner will say, well, you don't even know what you want. How can I know what you want? And how can I reliably bid on this? So we need to get better at articulating what's the problem and what's the ideal future state. AI can help us with that. Janak and the team are building some tools to help with that. We need to make it easier for prospective bidders to discover the problems that we're trying to solve and understand it, so that then they can say, oh, that fits my skill set. Okay, now I want to go and bid on this. We need to make it easier so that folks who want to bid can participate in that bid. So we're developing a portal. It's AI augmented, so that everyone can say, I've selected something I want to bid on. I'm going to put my website, my marketing materials, my white papers, my technological specs, everything about who I am and what I do and why I'm good at it. And it will automatically map that to the RFP and build you a fully compliant RFP in seconds. And you can see on every provision, here's what's green, so you don't need to waste time on it. Here's what's yellow, needs a little bit of work. And here's what's red, here's what's missing. And it can coach you through that and say, to get to a fully compliant competitive bid, you must do these things. How many of you have bid on a government contract, or seen a story where someone bid on a government contract where then they didn't hear back for 6 months, and then it got awarded to someone else, and then they inquired and said, well, what happened? Oh, well, you were missing these two little things. And so, yes, I know I'm preaching to the choir with Corey over here. And so what a shame, right? Because if they had just been told, oh, you missed this, can you fill this in? They might have still been the best bidder. But because of the process, it was engineered out so that couldn't happen. So we need to make sure, if we have these types of tools, then that everybody can be confident that once they hit submit, there's no reason it will be rejected because of incompletion or lack of fit. Then it will be evaluated solely based on merit and performance and capabilities and price. That's the way it should be. Then we need to build tools to make it easier for the folks evaluating those bids to say, how do I do this at scale quickly? So if I do have 20 bids and they're very exhaustive bids, well, first of all, can we standardize the comparables so you can do a crosswalk between every bid and see what are the strengths and weaknesses of every bid? We can build AI empowered tools to do that, and that is going to completely transform the way in which we evaluate work. So our goal is to completely change the way in which we communicate with the public what we need. What are our problems? What are the challenges that we're trying to solve? What are the outcomes we're looking for? How do we make it easier for folks to bid? And let's also get creative. I think we'll be talking a bit more in the fall about a challenge grant style program, kind of modeled after X Prize, where we say, here's a problem, here's a desired outcome, and here's a prize if you can fix it. We don't care who you are, where you're from. We don't care how big you are, how small you are. We care about the outcome. And I think that that's going to be a significant shift as well that will shake things up. And I know that some of the entrenched incumbents might feel a little uncomfortable. Look, this is not about us saying we don't want to do business with them. This is about us saying we want to do business differently. We welcome anyone who's stuck in the old ways and doesn't want to change. You're probably not going to do much work with us anymore.
And we'll move to question 3. I'm going to start it online. When Magna from Cisco presented on this slide, something caught my eye there around Cisco rolling out 90,000 agents to agents for each of their staff. And it's certainly in line with some of our thinking around pairing agents with applications. But that does introduce both a challenge and an opportunity. So, what we're dealing with there is an asking people to change the way that we're working, which is what we are doing. And so I'll open with Magna if you're still there. I know you're at the gate, perhaps boarding right now, but if you could, maybe you can share a little bit about what you're thinking about with respect to change and how a large organization, certainly larger than the government of Alberta, is thinking about absorbing change, AI-driven modernization without burning people out. We really want to focus on people here.
Yeah. I'm not at the gate yet. Thank you, Janak. I don't think you want to start there. You don't necessarily want to start with a rollout of 90,000 deployment agents for every employee, the way we're doing now. And that's not where we started either. I think most organizations can find really valuable use cases or hotspots that are repeatable and boring and only touches a few people, but provides a ton of value because you can do something you never was able to do before. You could do it, as we're talking a lot about here, a lot more efficiently than you could before with less resources. Now, as with any transformation, there's the people, process, and the technology, and you could argue that the people is often one of the biggest hurdles to get them bought in. I think the same thing almost applies to this as it does to everything else. It's to drive the growth mindset, to find the champions and win people over, and the opportunity that this gives you, rather than what could potentially be the negative sides of it. I think it's hard for everyone, not just the employees. New developments in AI today. So I think there's also really important to make it digestible, and I think that's what you guys are doing. In a great manner, you're using the right tools to make a lot of complexity very digestible, and leading by example in that way. I think you're on the right path to make this a reality.
Perfect. Thanks, Magna. And I'm going to go to Corey, Natasha, and then maybe we'll wrap this question with Cole online, and then we'll go on to the next.
What's interesting on the burnout side is how overworked public servants are across this country, and the ever increasing demands. I actually think this can be turned on its head, and it ties to that open source. Imagine if we had every provincial government across this country contributing to that core underlying infrastructure layer. And then you allowed anybody to build on top of that. We might have solutions that solve for, that granting application. We might have other times where we go, hey, you know what, we want to partner with Cohere because they've got this amazing embeddings model and done some work up here. We could kind of partner and come in. And as you start thinking about that underlying layer, you're saving such a massive amount of time for grunt work that's done over and over and over again in every single province. So in fact, if you build the right AI harnesses, if you understand that, well, wait a minute, yeah, the AI can write 10,000 lines a minute or whatever it is. Do I need to be reviewing that line by line? That's where people are getting burnt out. That's if you don't have the right system set up. If you have the right AI harnesses, you have those checks and balances, and you keep the professional involved, and you have those right guardrails, it actually enables you to do so much more. And I would argue over the long run, that combined with these common reusable solutions is going to allow us to actually reduce the amount of stress that we're putting on the bureaucracy because of overwhelming demands.
I don't actually think this is a technology problem. I think that the public services in Canada, I can talk about my lived experience in Nova Scotia. Governments are in constant change. Actually, that's the only thing that they can pretty much be certain of, is that something's going to need to change. So I think that some things to think about when, in terms of burning out or, supporting people through this, because I agree with Corey's comment. Like, there's opportunity here to free me up, especially as governments are looking at austerity and things like that. But what's going to happen potentially is you're going to start to bump up against machinery of government things that are going to frustrate the hell out of people, because the operating model, the operating system of government, and I think Cole touched on it earlier around the Westminster model. So there's the incentives for change, right? So is it in ministers' mandate letters to adopt new ways of working? Is that then trickling down into deputies and to other ministries? Because if we come at this only from a technology challenge, inside of the public sector, there is a classism system. policy making is at the top of that classism system. Technology and delivery has typically been seen as somebody else's kind of work to get done. The policy makers are at the grown-up table. So as a part of kind of rolling out this change, in which I think the AI Academy actually is going to start to get at that, because you're going to get momentum inside the bureaucracy and the benefits of it. But if we don't start to look at those incentives, if we don't start to look at how we fund things, how we hire people, procurement, that machinery has a way of grinding down transformation. So what's actually happening, in my opinion, with AI, because I saw this through the internet era of digital government, it was fundamentally about changing the way government worked. It was never about technology. It was about thinking about the people at the center. It was thinking about agile responsiveness and outcome. And I would say Canada had mediocre results at best during that era. Now, the velocity of change and what we can do with AI is going to actually allow us to achieve, I think, some of the vision that we saw through that. But if we don't start to also tackle some of those incentives and that machinery of government slowly over time, or give those examples of where we can, that is where things can start to really grind people down, in my experience.
Perfect. Thanks. And we'll go to Cole online. Cole, why don't you jump in?
Thanks very much, Janak. And that question of burning out really benefits from comparing with another scenario. So my wife was in respiratory care and on the front line during the pandemic. And it wasn't the multiple gowns and masks and face shields and all of those sorts of things that led to her burning out over the course of the months that it led into it. It was the constant uncertainty, coming home at the end of every day, not knowing if she was going to be sick with a disease that nobody understood yet. And that uncertainty is really at the roots of burnout in every profession. So if you've got technology professionals who don't know what the world of the future is going to look like for them, or civil servants who don't, that's constant pressure, right? If you pilot and never put anything into production, that's just uncertainty that stresses the system. If you continuously are alerting people, oh, check this, it might be wrong, you're burning out the system. And it goes on, that change fatigue really comes down from people not knowing where you're going. So I think the strength, when I look at the velocity papers and what you're doing here, is you said, this is where we're going, and this is what things are going to be like when you get there. This is what Simon Wardley called the town planner solution to really driving change in organizations. You have to create a world where people can see where they're going, you can help them get there, and then they can draw the change themselves. And I think that's the real power here in the change we're trying to create. If we're not going to burn people out, you and every other government needs to do what you've done and said, this is how it's going to be. And that leaves room for there to be change within that. Like every professional has a toolbox full of hundreds of tools, 90,000 agents. Shouldn't be a shock to anyone who's a professional, right? It's how do we create a situation where it's easy to learn how to use those tools without being constantly stressed by the churn of trying to create change in an undisciplined way without a clear goal. There's what I think.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'm conscious of time. I did commit to the room to leave some time for Q&A in the room. We do have some microphones. I think Michelle, we're going to collect some microphones here. So if I could ask, folks in the room, if you have a burning question, you've got your minister here. There's many TI-friendly faces. So hi, everybody. If you wanted to ask a question about what you've heard today or anything that's been shared, please dive in. It's your golden opportunity. Or pretend your minister's not here and ask the question. All right, I see that gentleman at the back is brave again. So thanks. Question number 2. And I love the shirt, by the way. He's got his Doom shirt on, if you remember Doom. There we go.
Yeah, since we're talking about AI, I felt the Doom shirt was appropriate. My question is one, I'm glad you brought up the topic of incentives and branding, and I want to bring it back to the story that the minister brought up about Harris, an amazing story of saving so much money. And I guess from the perspective of private industry versus the public sector, I'm thinking, I don't want to get into how hard it is to fire a government employee. But on the private side, what I hear is you extracted a lot of business domain and expertise from this employee, and now that employee now has to find a whole new way to be useful. Maybe he's able to do that, maybe he isn't. How do you sell this idea to the public that, hey, if you automate your expertise, your specialties, how do you move forward? What do you do next? What's your next step from here? And I'm just increasingly, we're seeing so much more resistance and technophobia related to that idea. From the perspective of government, where do we go?
So I'll take a start with this, and then if anyone else wants to jump in. The fact is that Harris is still the expert on contracts and the ERP system. That didn't change. What changed is that the most boring, mundane, and painstaking labor that he would need to do could now be automated. So that frees up his ability to focus his skill set on the things that are higher value and higher impact. I think every government across this country can relate to the concept of bottlenecks and backlogs. There are tons of examples. Permit approval times take forever because right now there's too much human dependency on the entire process. It's all paper-based, it's all time-based, it's all human-based. There's so much opportunity for some automation with the human in the loop and the human still in control. But right now, the citizens wait longer, citizens pay more in taxes, and things just sit on the shelf until we can get to them because we don't have the ability to scale infinitely with people. Well, now when we can equip all of our people with AI tools and they can become orders of magnitude more productive, it now means that we can go and focus on the things that were previously impossible but still necessary. That has been the dilemma in the public service forever, is there were things that were necessary that were also impossible because we have constraints, because we have limited resources. And so I'm not worried about folks like Harish becoming obsolete. What I'm trying to do is to inspire all of his peers to say, I want to be like Harish. I am still always going to be the expert on whatever my subject matter expertise is. I'm not going to delegate that to the AI, but I'm going to instead say, how can I as an expert do 10 times more with my expertise so that we can get more done? There's always more to do. We can have every single government of Alberta employee using these tools and techniques, and we would still have more work to do. The example of the fact that we have 130 years worth of legacy technology debt to remediate that we can now do in 4. Like, something that was impossible is now possible. We're not getting rid of the people who are helping to do it 40 times faster. We still need them. We still need their expertise. So that's how I would respond to this. I just do not buy into the narrative and the fear-mongering from folks who say that this is to make the folk obsolete by automating parts of their workflow. It's just going to allow them to focus on things that are of higher value, higher impact, and things that were previously possible.
So from a private sector perspective, I think people have seen and heard about you guys are doing a lot of stuff on code. Google a year ago was about 30% of our code was AI generated. I think we're now at 70%. We haven't laid off any of the coders. And to quote some of the folks, I think it was All In podcast guys talked about the people that were doing your best engineering work to build the code in the first place are now doing the QA. So you want your best engineers testing the machines to making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So those people aren't going away. The other favorite quote, I think it was at a Halifax security conference or something like that. AI is not going to take jobs. AI is going to take jobs if people aren't using AI. And then so the augmentation, and then back to systems that we all are familiar with, the healthcare system. There's not enough jobs and people to do the job to deliver. Province of Nova Scotia Health in particular, they're rolling out some stuff that is going to take the process of charting the patient from 20. That's the process where you hand in your card to the ER and then sit and wait. They're trying to find out every bit of information about you across your EMRs, clinical systems, everywhere. It takes 20 to 25 minutes. They're going to bring that down to 2 or 3 minutes, and they're already doing that in their testing. That's getting time back to the clinicians and physicians to treat patients because they don't have a shortage of work to do. They have too much work to do. Back to the backlog question you have. So I think it's just going to look differently, and it's not necessarily quite the doom. And there's just some papers published on the changed work that I tagged you on LinkedIn this morning on some studies, and you're not seeing that overall transformation and job loss yet. So maybe a little bit more media than reality.
Just maybe if I can make one comment. I mean, I think back to your example at Harris, I'm pretty sure that Harris doesn't enjoy coming in every day doing that tedious kind of grunt work that's really grinding him down, probably making him really hate his life and not wanting him to work in the first place, right? So I think that this is really an opportunity using AI for us to basically take all that away, as you mentioned, Mr. Glubish, but also there's one kind of chain of thought I like to think about a lot, and it's that innovation requires time. And the best source of innovation are domain experts like Harris. When we can use AI to give them back that time to think, to innovate, then we can really start to transform public service. Because Harris now has the time, he can experiment quickly, he can fail fast, and he can bring his maybe, I don't know how long Harris has been with government, but let's say 20, 30 years. Harris has 20 or 30 years of pain and understanding the struggle, the friction that exists within government. And if anything else, he's got a laundry list in the back of his mind that he never thought he would ever be able to get to bring to reality. And I think now AI is going to give Harris back that time. So if anything else, it's going to create more opportunity, and it's really going to help transform the public sector.
So speaking of giving back time, unfortunately, it's 12:03. I would say, first of all, a great thanks to our panelists today for the discussion. So thank you very much. You can descend on them like that mosquito that was trying to get me just now and ask them some quick questions. I will remind you, I think they want us out of this space by 12:20 or something like that. So thank you very much. Thanks for your participation. You'll hear more coming out of technology and innovation in the coming weeks, more about the agency event in October. And of course, we will continue to, as we have since the launch of the white papers, continue to put out white papers, open source code, and we deeply value the partnership of all of the public and private sector folks who are in the room and on the call. So thank you very much. Be safe today. It looks like a big storm's coming in. So be careful, be safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.